Hello friends, how are you feeling tonight? I hope your body is relaxed and your mind is calm. If sleep feels far away, this story might help you drift gently into rest. Tonight we're traveling back to the 1700s, into the quiet cobblestone streets of Colonial Williamsburg, where candlelight flickers in windows, blacksmiths hammer at their forges, apothecaries prepare healing remedies, and children chase one another through sunlit marketplaces. As we wander these historic streets together, you'll watch craftsmen at work, hear the soft murmur of townsfolk, and feel the rhythm of a day in a community long ago. Every corner holds a story, every face a small part of the town's heartbeat, and every moment invites you to step into this peaceful, living history. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let yourself be transported to Williamsburg, where the past awakens softly before your eyes. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our calming historical journeys. The first light of morning slid quietly across the rooftops of Williamsburg, casting a soft golden glow on the wooden shingles and brick chimneys that lined the narrow streets. The air was cool, touched with the dampness of dew, and the cobblestones glistened faintly as though they had been polished overnight. A rooster crowed somewhere beyond the gardens, and the quiet stirrings of a town awakening could be heard in the muffled sound of doors opening, buckets clattering at a well, and the faint creak of cartwheels on the road. Williamsburg in the 18th century was a place both small and grand. Its streets were not crowded like the great cities of Europe, yet they held a sense of order and ceremony. This was the capital of Virginia, a colony that stretched wide across forests and rivers. And here within its tidy grid of lanes stood taverns, workshops, a grand college, and the stately halls of government. At dawn, though, it was a gentler place. Horses shook their manes as stable boys led them from wooden stalls. Smoke drifted lazily from chimneys as hearth fires were rekindled, and neighbors greeted one another with soft voices before beginning their tasks. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, the broad avenue at the heart of town, shutters opened one by one. A woman in a linen cap stepped onto her porch to sweep the boards clean. A boy ran across the street carrying a wooden bucket, the handle clattering against his wrist as he moved. The rhythmic sound of a blacksmith's hammer had not yet begun, but the forge was awake, its doorway yawning open to reveal the dim red glow of embers being coaxed back to life. Inside, the blacksmith, a broad-shouldered man with soot already smudged across his arms, bent low to blow gently on the coals. The fire crackled and breathed back into being, casting warm light across iron tools hanging from pegs on the wall. He straightened slowly, wiping his brow, and reached for a length of metal that lay waiting. Soon, the steady, comforting ring of hammer on iron would echo across the street, a sound that carried far in the crisp morning air. In Williamsburg, such sounds were the heartbeat of the town. The smith's hammer, the cooper's mallet striking oak staves, the apothecary's pestle grinding herbs in a mortar. Not far away, the apothecary's shop opened its door. Shelves lined with glass bottles caught the growing sunlight, their contents glimmering in hues of green, amber, and pale gold. Dried bundles of herbs hung from rafters, releasing a faint, earthy fragrance into the room. The apothecary, a thoughtful man in a waistcoat of dark wool, arranged his instruments with slow care. Brass scales, wooden boxes of powders, neatly folded papers for wrapping remedies. A woman entered with a soft knock, seeking a tonic for her husband's cough, and he greeted her with gentle courtesy, mixing herbs with a steady hand and explaining their virtues in a calm, deliberate voice. Out on the street, a cart rattled by, its wooden wheels bumping over uneven stones. The driver flicked his reins gently, guiding the horse past shops and taverns, past the tall spire of Bruton Parish Church, where bells sometimes rang to call the faithful to worship. The taverns themselves were still hushed at this hour, their shutters closed, their long wooden benches empty. Yet faint aromas of bread baking in ovens hinted at the bustle that would come by midday, when travellers and townsfolk alike would gather for meals of roasted meat, stew, and ale served in pewter mugs. Children began to appear along the lanes, some carrying slates and books bound in leather, walking toward the schoolhouse. Their voices were light, their laughter subdued but bright against the quiet rhythm of the morning. A teacher rang a small handbell at the doorway, calling them in, while parents lingered for a moment at fences and doorways before returning to their chores. The town moved with a deliberate, unhurried pace. No one rushed, for life itself was slower here, measured by the tolling of bells, the setting of the sun, and the tasks that marked each day. At the printing office, a journeyman set type by hand, pressing letters into the wooden frame to prepare the next sheet of the Virginia Gazette. At the wigmaker's shop, a man worked strands of horsehair with meticulous patience, shaping them into the powdered wigs that gentlemen would wear in the courts and assembly. Everywhere, the morning unfolded in harmony. The clink of tools, the low murmur of voices, the rustle of skirts against cobblestone. Williamsburg was alive but never hurried, its people bound together by duty, craft, and community. As the sun rose higher, beams of light streamed across the wide street, striking the tall windows of the governor's palace at the far end. Its brick walls glowed warmly, its gardens behind tall hedges still wrapped in quiet shadow. The palace was a symbol of authority, the residence of royal governors sent from across the sea, but to the townsfolk it was also a backdrop, a reminder of order and hierarchy. In the morning calm, though, it was simply another part of the landscape, a grand house overlooking a town just beginning its day. The blacksmith's hammer at last rang out, strong and steady, the rhythm carrying down the street like a heartbeat. With it came the smell of iron and smoke, the hiss of water as hot metal was plunged into a barrel. The apothecary continued his careful mixing, the printer leaned over his press, the baker pulled loaves from his oven, and the children's recitation of lessons could be faintly heard through an open window. Morning in Williamsburg was not a rush of urgency, but a weaving together of countless small labours, each household, each workshop adding its note to the quiet music of daily life. The sun climbed higher, shadows shortened, and the town, fully awake now, settled into the gentle rhythm of another day in the 18th century. As the sun climbed toward its height, Williamsburg took on a gentle brightness. The morning's cool mist had burned away, leaving the streets warm and dappled with patches of shade cast by tall oaks and maples. The cobblestones, still glistening from dew earlier, now shimmered faintly underfoot. A breeze stirred the air, carrying with it the mingled scents of wood smoke, fresh bread, and earth tilled in nearby gardens. Duke of Gloucester Street was at the heart of it all, stretching straight and broad through the town, lined on either side with houses, shops, and taverns. By midday, the quiet murmur of morning had grown into a steady chorus. Horses trotted past at a measured pace, their hooves striking rhythmically against the stones, while carriages creaked along, their polished wheels glinting in the light. Drivers called softly to their teams, and from within the carriages came the faint rustle of silk, or the muted laughter of passengers bound for visits or business. The taverns, which only hours before had been shuttered, and still now opened wide their doors. The Raleigh Tavern, well known across the colony, stirred with the hum of voices and the faint aroma of stewed meat. Inside, long wooden tables were set with pewter plates and mugs, while servants moved swiftly yet quietly, carrying trays of bread and pitchers of ale. A group of travellers sat near the hearth, their coats dusted from the road, speaking in low tones about journeys from the north. Gentlemen of the town, dressed neatly in waistcoats of wool and stockings pulled to the knee, gathered to discuss trade, politics, and the affairs of the colony. The atmosphere was lively, yet never hurried, shaped by the steady rhythm of conversation, the scrape of a chair against wood, the faint crackle of the fire that burned even in warmer months. Outside, the marketplace had begun to fill. Merchants arranged bolts of cloth in bright shades of blue and red, spreading them carefully across tables so that the sunlight caught their threads. A cooper displayed barrels newly bound with iron hoops, their oak staves smelling of fresh-cut timber. The milliner, her bonnet neat and crisp, pinned hats with feathers and ribbons, each one catching the eye of women who paused to examine them. Children clutched their mothers' hands as they peered curiously at the goods, wide-eyed at the colors and textures of a world beyond their own homes. Near the apothecary's shop, men discussed news from across the ocean, A fresh issue of the Virginia Gazette had been posted outside the printing office, and townsfolk gathered to read aloud the headlines. Reports from London, letters from merchants, notices of ships arriving in the Chesapeake. Some lingered in debate, voices low but intent, while others passed on, their thoughts turned back to the more immediate concerns of fields, workshops, and households. The hum of activity carried into every corner of the town. At the shoemaker's, leather was cut and stitched with deliberate care, the smell of tanned hides filling the small room. At the silversmith's, light glinted off polished spoons and buckles displayed in the window. The blacksmith's hammer still rang steadily, though louder now, as more customers arrived with requests for hinges, nails, or tools to be mended. The rhythm of his work, the hiss of quenched iron, the occasional crackle of sparks, seemed to keep pace with the pulse of Williamsburg itself. Across the street, a group of boys played a game of rolling wooden hoops with sticks, their laughter breaking through the steady murmur of trade. Girls carried baskets of cloth or bread, balancing them carefully as they walked along the lane. In kitchens, servants stirred pots that simmered with stews of vegetables and meat, the fragrance drifting out into gardens. Bread baked in brick ovens filled the air with its deep, comforting scent. Tables were set with earthenware, pewter, or, in the grander homes, delicate porcelain carefully shipped across the sea. Meals were simple, but satisfying. Roasted chicken, beans, pies filled with apples or berries. The sustenance of a colony that valued both work and rest. Beyond the bustle of shops and taverns, the College of William and Mary stood with quiet dignity, its brick walls warmed by the midday sun. Students moved across the courtyard with books tucked under their arms, their voices carrying faintly on the breeze. Some debated matters of philosophy or law, eager with the energy of youth, while others sat beneath trees, copying passages by hand or reading aloud from well-worn volumes. The college gave Williamsburg a sense of learned calm, a reminder that ideas and knowledge were as much a part of the town as trade and craft. The governor's palace, too, stirred with life at midday. Servants bustled in its kitchens, preparing meals for the household. In the gardens, neatly trimmed and laid out with order, figures strolled slowly, pausing to admire hedges and fountains. Guards at the entrance shifted their muskets and stood watchful, their uniforms crisp in the sun. Though a symbol of power, the palace seemed softened in the daylight, its presence less commanding and more stately, like a grand elder among the town's buildings. Everywhere, life moved in harmony, unhurried yet purposeful. Midday in Williamsburg was not a time of haste, but of balance, a weaving together of work and fellowship, trade and learning, duty and rest. As the sun reached its zenith, shadows shortened, and the town settled into the quiet rhythm of its labors, each moment steady, each sound part of the larger music of the day. The bells of Bruton Parish rang out across the rooftops, their tones deep and resonant, marking the passing of hours. People paused in their tasks to listen, their faces lifted briefly toward the spire, before turning back with calm acceptance to the work of hands and hearts. In Williamsburg, the hours were measured not by urgency, but by the gentle order of life itself, a cadence that spoke of continuity, of tradition, and of a world moving at the pace of the sun across the sky. As the afternoon light softened, Williamsburg began to change. The strong, bright gold of midday gave way to a gentler amber, and long shadows stretched across Duke of Gloucester Street. The air cooled, carrying with it the faint sweetness of wood smoke rising from chimneys as hearth fires were stirred to life once more. Horses and carts still moved along the road, but their pace was slower now, less urgent, as though the whole town was preparing to exhale after a long day of steady work. The marketplace, lively with trade only hours before, began to thin. Merchants folded cloth and stacked bolts neatly back into chests, tying them with string. The milliner gathered her ribbons and feathers, tucking them carefully into boxes, while children who had tugged at their mother's sleeves now walked home tired but content, wooden toys clutched in hand. The cooper rolled a final barrel toward his cart, its oak staves catching the last of the sun, and with that, the market stalls stood quieter, awaiting the next day. Taverns, however, grew warmer and brighter as evening approached. The Raleigh Tavern's windows glowed with candlelight, casting a welcoming shimmer across the street. Inside, firelight leapt against the walls, filling the room with golden warmth. The scent of roasted meat and freshly baked bread filled the air, mingling with the low hum of conversation. Gentlemen leaned across tables, discussing matters of trade or politics in hushed tones, while travelers recounted stories of the road. Tankards clinked softly, chairs scraped against the floor, and servants moved gracefully, carrying platters of steaming food to tables set with pewter dishes. Not far away, smaller taverns buzzed with more rustic cheer. Farmers, having brought their goods into town, now sat with mugs of ale, their laughter carrying in bursts of sound between the steady drone of conversation. A fiddler played near the hearth, his bow gliding gently across strings, the melody rising and falling like a lullaby carried on wood smoke. Feet tapped in rhythm, hands clapped quietly, and for a moment, the worries of fields and labor melted into simple joy. On the quieter lanes, families gathered in their homes. Windows glowed with soft candlelight, their panes shining like tiny stars against the growing dusk. Inside, tables were laid with modest meals, stews, bread, cheese, and apples sliced into bowls. Children sat cross-legged on benches, their eyes heavy with the day's work and play, while parents spoke in low, soothing voices about chores yet to come, or news carried by neighbors. The crackle of the hearth filled silences, steady and calming, the true heart of each household. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, the town slipped into a softer world. Street lanterns were lit, their faint flames flickering against the darkening sky. The cobblestones gleamed in patches where oil lamps cast their glow, while shadows deepened between buildings. The spire of Bruton Parish Church rose dark against the twilight, and the last call of a bird echoed from the trees before fading into the night. The governor's palace, too, stood serene in the dusk. Its gardens lay hushed, the hedges now deep green shadows, the fountains reflecting the fading light. In the great hall within, candles flickered along polished wood, their flames mirrored in brass sconces. Servants moved quietly through corridors, carrying trays and trimming wicks, while voices echoed faintly from distant chambers. The palace embodied a still grandeur, stately yet softened in the evening, as though even authority itself was wrapped in calm. Children, now finished with lessons, often gathered near doorsteps in the cool evening air. Some played softly with marbles or sticks, while others sat listening to elders tell stories, tales of the past, of journeys across the sea, or of the natural world surrounding them. Their voices carried faintly, punctuated by laughter that soon gave way to yawns. One by one, families called them indoors, and the lanes grew quiet again. By nightfall, Williamsburg had transformed. Where once there had been the clamor of trade and the ring of hammers, there was now the murmur of voices, the hum of music, and the soothing glow of lanterns. The sounds of the evening were gentler. The distant clip of a horse on stone, the hush of a door closing, the low strum of a fiddle carried faintly on the breeze. Smoke curled steadily into the starlit sky, rising from dozens of chimneys, blending into the cool air of the Virginia night. Inside one tavern, a storyteller's voice wove through the air, carrying listeners into a world of memory and imagination. Men leaned closer to hear, their faces lit by firelight, their mugs warming their hands. Outside, the streets lay hushed, the faint glow of the tavern windows shining like beacons against the dark. A dog barked distantly, then settled again, and the town seemed wrapped in a quiet embrace. The night deepened slowly, not all at once, and Williamsburg eased into it with the same measured rhythm that marked its days. There was no rush, No sudden silence, only the gradual softening of sound and the dimming of light, until the town rested in a harmony of flickering candles, fading music, and the deep calm of evening. For those who walk the streets at this hour, perhaps returning from a tavern or tending to a late chore, the air was cool and fragrant, touched by pine and smoke. Stars glittered faintly above, and the moon, pale and rising, cast its glow upon rooftops and gardens. Every doorway seemed a world of its own, every window a lantern into another life, yet all bound together in the gentle stillness of Colonial Williamsburg at night. As the sun drifts lower across the wide Virginia sky, the golden glow begins to soften into shades of amber and rose, casting long shadows upon the cobblestone streets of Williamsburg. The air grows cooler now, carrying with it the faint scent of hearth smoke rising from chimneys, mingling with the earthy smell of worn leather and the sweetness of molasses cake still cooling in kitchens. The day has slowed, yet life in the town hums with a quieter rhythm, one that invites reflection. The blacksmith finishes his final work for the evening, setting aside the hammer that has struck countless sparks since the morning. The fire in his forge has dimmed, glowing like embers waiting to rest. His hands are tired, streaked with soot, but there is pride in his heart, for each tool shaped today will serve his neighbors. A farmer will guide his plow with renewed strength, a wheelwright will build carts more sturdy, and the soldiers training nearby will trust their muskets repaired. It is in these simple yet lasting acts that his life finds meaning. Not far down the street, the apothecary closes his ledgers, noting the medicines dispensed during the day. He takes a moment to carefully arrange glass jars on the shelves, powders and tinctures in neat rows, their labels written in his fine hand. Outside his window, lanterns begin to flicker to life, each one lit by a steady hand carrying flame from house to house. He steps outside and takes a breath of the cooling air, pausing to listen. The crickets sing in the grass, and the muffled sound of hooves upon the road tells him that travelers are still returning before nightfall. In such stillness, the town feels suspended, as though time itself lingers just a little longer to savor the evening. In one of the taverns, laughter and gentle conversation begin to fill the wooden room. Candles glow upon the tables, casting warm light upon pewter mugs and simple dishes of roasted meat and bread. Merchants talk of shipments arriving at the docks, while travelers exchange tales of far-off places. Yet even in this lively space, there is a calm that settles, for the day has been long, and tomorrow will bring its own work. A fiddler plays softly in the corner, the melody weaving through the chatter like a thread of memory that all can share. Children play a final round of games in the street, their voices ringing in the twilight. They chase each other over cobblestones, darting past fences, and pausing at the sight of fireflies rising from the grass. Their laughter soon fades as mothers call them inside, where candlelight glows behind curtained windows. Within each home, families gather close, sharing their evening meals and their stories, words carrying warmth just as much as the food upon the table. The church bell rings in the distance, its deep sound carrying across the rooftops. Some pause to listen, hands folding in silent prayer, while others simply find comfort in its steady rhythm, a reminder that life here is guided not only by work, but by faith, by community, by a sense of belonging that threads through each soul. In these moments, Williamsburg feels less like a town and more like a living hearth, each person a spark contributing to the glow. As night deepens, lanterns cast pools of light along the streets, the cobblestones shining faintly beneath their glow. A carriage rattles past, its wheels echoing softly until they fade into the night. The stars reveal themselves, one by one, scattered like silver across the velvet sky. The moon rises above the rooftops, pale and watchful, shining down upon the quiet lives below. For those who walk the streets at this hour, there is a peace that lingers, as though the town itself breathes slower under the gentle gaze of the night. In a quiet home, a craftsman leans back in his wooden chair, the firelight flickering across his face. He closes his eyes, listening to the crackle of the hearth, and in his stillness, one can sense the very rhythm of life in Williamsburg. Work, rest, faith, and fellowship. These weave together to create not just a single day, but the timeless fabric of a community that endures. The world outside may change, but here, in this town of candlelight and cobblestone, the essence remains, as constant as the rising and setting sun. As the night settles more deeply over Williamsburg, the gentle hush that blankets the town grows stronger, as though the streets themselves have fallen into slumber. The lively sounds of the tavern fade behind thick wooden doors, leaving only a faint echo of laughter and the occasional notes of a fiddle drifting out into the cool air. Beyond those walls, the world has quieted. Cobblestone streets glisten softly beneath the moonlight, their uneven stones catching the pale glow like scattered fragments of silver. Lanterns burn low now, their flames no longer bright and eager, but steady, calm, like faithful sentinels guarding the night. A watchman makes his rounds, his boots sounding against the stone, his lantern swinging gently with each step. He pauses at corners, looking down the length of the street, watching for any sign of danger. Though in this small town, danger rarely comes. Still, his presence offers comfort, a reminder that even while families sleep, someone remains awake, watchful, ensuring that all within Williamsburg rest without fear. Inside one home, a mother settles her children beneath quilts sewn from scraps of fabric, each piece holding its own small story. The children listen drowsily as she hums a quiet tune, a lullaby learned from her own mother years before. Their eyelids grow heavy, and soon their soft breathing fills the room. The mother leans back, listening to the sound of the fire crackling in the hearth. It is a small, ordinary moment, but within it rests the very heart of life here: warmth, care, and the promise of tomorrow. In another home, a scholar sits by candlelight, his quill scratching gently against parchment. He writes with slow patience, recording notes of the day, perhaps a letter to a friend in another colony, perhaps reflections meant for no one but himself. The flame beside him flickers and bends, shadows stretching long across the wooden table. Outside, the call of an owl rises from the trees, carried into the stillness like a voice from the deep woods beyond the edge of town. He pauses at the sound, then smiles faintly, returning to his work, knowing he is not alone in keeping watch through the night. The blacksmith, long finished with his labors, rests at his table with a simple meal of bread and cheese. His hands, though tired, hold the food with quiet gratitude, for each piece sustains him just as his craft sustains others. His home is modest, the floorboards worn, the furniture plain, yet it holds a richness that no coin can measure. The richness of purpose, of knowing that what he creates with iron and fire matters. As he chews slowly, his gaze drifts to the small window where the moonlight spills in, and he feels the peace of the day settling within him, firm and steady as the iron he has shaped. Further down the street, the apothecary has extinguished the lamps in his shop. The shelves of jars stand in neat rows, their contents resting quietly in the shadows. Only a faint glow remains from the dying fire in the back room. He has left a small candle burning near the door, not for light, but for reassurance. There is comfort in knowing that a flame still lives, even in the darkness. He steps into his own chamber, the wooden floor cool beneath his feet, and as he lies down upon his bed, he whispers a brief prayer for those who may need healing, those whose names he knows, and those he does not. The streets themselves seem to breathe in the stillness. The wind moves gently through the trees, stirring the leaves in soft whispers. The scent of earth, wood, and smoke lingers in the cool night air. Horses in their stables shift softly, the rustle of hay and the quiet sound of hooves against wood joining the chorus of the night. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then falls silent, its duty to remind its master complete. Above it all, the sky stretches vast and unbroken, a tapestry of stars shimmering with ancient light. The moon casts its glow across rooftops, across fences, across the worn cobblestones where countless footsteps have passed. It is a light that has watched over this town since its earliest days, and will continue long after, these particular lives have faded. The stars hold their silence, but their presence is steady, a reminder that even in the smallest corners of the world, the great heavens keep watch. In this stillness, Williamsburg rests as one. Every family, every craftsman, every laborer, every child, each life woven into the fabric of the town. Though tomorrow will bring its work, its trade, its lessons and tasks, tonight belongs to peace. The kind of peace that does not shout or boast but moves gently, like a hand smoothing a blanket, like a flame flickering low in the hearth, like a sigh released before sleep. And so the town breathes, slow and deep, its heart steady, its soul at rest, as the night deepens and the stars keep their watch. The night in Williamsburg drifts onward, deeper and stiller, as though the entire town has fallen into a gentle slumber of its own. Midnight has long passed, though no clock strikes the hour, only the rhythm of silence marking time's steady march. The taverns are quiet now, their doors bolted, their hearths reduced to faint embers glowing in the ashes. The streets are empty, save for the watchman whose lantern still sways faintly as he makes his slow rounds. Even his footsteps sound softer now, cushioned by the thick silence of the hour. The blacksmith sleeps in his chamber above the shop, his strong hands resting at last. Beside his bed sits a small wooden box that holds a Bible, worn and cracked at the spine, and a folded letter from a brother who lives far away in the northern colonies. He dreams not of the fire or the anvil, but of quiet fields and the smell of springtime grass, memories from his youth that rise gently in the night like smoke curling upward. His breathing is steady, and though his labor is hard, the peace of this moment is as much a reward as any coin he earns. Across the town, the apothecary too lies in his bed, though sleep does not hold him as firmly. He stirs now and again, his mind restless with the faces of those who depend upon his remedies. He thinks of the young child whose fever had only begun to ease, of the elderly woman who had come for willow bark to calm her aching joints. Even in sleep, his thoughts remain with them, as though their burdens linger upon his spirit. Yet his body is weary, and gradually, the heaviness of the hour draws him deeper into rest. The soft glow of the candle near his door has burned low, its flame barely taller than a whisper. Beyond the houses and shops, the land itself holds stillness. The fields lie silent under the moonlight, the furrows traced faintly in the soil like lines upon an ancient hand. The woods stand tall and dark, the trees whispering faintly when the wind moves through. Now and then an animal stirs, perhaps a fox slipping through the shadows or a raccoon rustling among the leaves. An owl, perched upon the bough of an oak, lifts its voice again, calling into the vastness. Its cry echoes softly, rising above rooftops and chimneys before dissolving into the night. The watchman pauses at the edge of the square, lifting his lantern high as he peers across the empty space. The flicker of the flame illuminates the steps of the courthouse, the posts where notices are pinned, the benches where men sit during the day to discuss matters of law and politics. Now they sit deserted, touched only by moonlight and shadow. He lowers the lantern and exhales, his breath pale in the cool air. He is alone, yet not lonely, for in these hours he feels the town resting, like a family gathered in sleep. His task is quiet, but it is not without meaning. He is the thread that keeps the night whole, the one who watches while others dream. Inside another home, a young girl stirs in her bed, her small hands clutching at the quilt as she dreams. In her sleep, she imagines grand stories told to her by her mother, tales of distant lands across the ocean, of knights and castles, of ships with sails spread wide upon endless seas. She whispers once, half a word, then falls quiet again, her face soft and peaceful. Her dreams are woven of hope, the bright promise of a world yet unseen, a world her town is slowly becoming a part of with each passing year. As the hour stretches on, the air grows colder, and the flames in hearths across Williamsburg burn down to their last embers. The wood crackles faintly, giving its final warmth before surrendering to ash. Families lie close together beneath quilts, finding comfort in the shared closeness. The silence deepens, so complete that even the faint creak of a timber within a home sounds loud, as if the house itself sighs in its sleep. Above it all, the stars remain. They wheel slowly across the sky, silent witnesses to the lives below. The constellations, ancient, unchanging, seem to watch as the town rests, their light falling upon rooftops and fences, upon barns and fields, upon every slumbering soul. The moon begins to lower toward the horizon, its silver glow softening as it prepares to yield to dawn. There is a moment, just before the first hint of light touches the edge of the world, when the night seems to hold its breath. The watchman feels it as he pauses once more, his lantern nearly burned low. The silence is vast, heavy, as if all of creation waits. Then, faintly, from the east, the dark sky begins to shift. The blackness softens, giving way to the faintest shade of grey, a quiet promise that morning is not far away. Williamsburg remains asleep, its people unaware of the change. Yet the earth itself feels it. The animals stir, the horses in their stalls shift, sensing what is to come. The birds, still hidden in branches, wait with hushed wings. The air grows crisper, thinner, filled with the fragile expectancy of dawn. And so, the town lies upon the edge of daybreak, wrapped still in dreams, held still in night, while the first threads of light prepare to weave themselves into the fabric of another day. The faintest breath of light touches the horizon, soft as a whisper, so delicate that it could almost be mistaken for a dream. Yet slowly, steadily, it spreads, drawing a pale line across the eastern sky. Night loosens its hold, retreating gently, and Williamsburg begins to stir from its slumber. The stars fade one by one, their ancient glow softening, until only the moon remains as a pale ghost above the rooftops. The first bird calls from the branches of an oak beyond the town. Its voice is tentative, testing the air, and for a moment there is no reply. Then another bird joins, and another, until the silence of the night is broken by a chorus, a rising wave of song that greets the coming day. Their voices ripple through the streets, carried upon the cool air, and mingle with the first faint sounds of human life returning. A thin wisp of smoke rises from one chimney, then another, as early risers coax embers back to flame. The scent of burning wood drifts slowly across the square, mingling with the morning air, a fragrance both sharp and comforting. Within homes, hearths awaken to life once more, their warmth driving away the lingering chill of the night. Mothers and fathers move quietly, stirring porridge, preparing bread, setting the rhythm of the day. The blacksmith is among the earliest to rise. Long before the streets are fully alive, he steps outside his small home, the air crisp against his face. He breathes deeply, filling his lungs with the freshness of morning. The sky above him is no longer black, but a soft blue, streaked with delicate threads of pink and gold. He listens to the birdsong for a moment, his eyes narrowing with quiet appreciation, before he returns to his forge to stir the coals. Soon the first hammer strikes will ring once more, but for now, the sound of birds and the crackle of fire mark the beginning of his day. Elsewhere, the apothecary rises slowly, his body stiff from restless sleep. He washes his face with cool water from a basin, the chill of it awakening him fully. In the stillness of his shop, he lights a small candle, though the light of dawn already begins to press gently through the shutters. He takes a moment to arrange his thoughts before setting about his work, checking his jars, preparing fresh bundles of herbs, arranging them neatly in rows. His mind is already upon those who will visit today, and he whispers a quiet prayer that his remedies will bring them comfort. The town streets, empty only a short while ago, begin to fill with life. A farmer drives his cart into the square, the wooden wheels rattling over the cobblestones. A boy runs ahead of him, laughing, his footsteps echoing against the walls of the buildings. Doors creak open, shutters are drawn back, and the town stretches awake with the grace of a body shaking off its dreams. The air grows warmer with each moment, the faint light swelling into brightness. From the tavern comes the smell of bread baking, mingled with the faint bitterness of coffee being brewed for travelers who rise early. A servant sweeps the doorstep, her broom scratching softly against the stone. Inside, benches and tables are prepared once again for the day's guests, though for now the room is still quiet, the fire crackling steadily in the hearth. Soon, voices will rise within these walls once more, but the morning belongs to stillness and preparation. Children step outside, rubbing the sleep from their eyes, their hair tousled from rest. They chase each other across the yard, their laughter ringing out, bright and unrestrained, a sound that seems to blend perfectly with the morning air. Mothers call them back, reminding them of chores, yet the joy of their play lingers, weaving itself into the fabric of the town's waking hours. The courthouse bell rings softly, marking the arrival of the new day. Its chime is low, steady, not urgent but certain, reminding all within hearing that time continues its endless passage. Merchants open their shops, arranging goods in neat displays by the door, bolts of fabric, jars of spices, tools, and books. Their voices join the growing hum of the streets as neighbors greet one another with nods and quiet words. And then, as the sun finally breaks free from the horizon, golden light spills across Williamsburg. It paints the rooftops with warmth, catches upon window glass, and lays a soft glow across the cobblestones. The shadows retreat quickly, replaced by the brightness of morning. The world feels new again, reborn with each sunrise, as though yesterday's burdens have been washed away in the night. Williamsburg, once wrapped in silence, now pulses with life once more. The cycle has turned, as it always does, carrying the town from darkness to light, from rest to labor, from dreams to waking. And within this simple rhythm lies the heart of its endurance, the quiet strength that binds its people together through every season, every challenge, every year. The day has begun. By mid-morning, Williamsburg had come fully alive. The sun had risen higher in the sky, casting a bright, golden light across the rooftops and streets. Shadows had shortened, and the warmth of the day encouraged movement, stirring the townsfolk into the steady rhythm of their work and routines. The air was rich with the mingled scents of fresh bread, brewing coffee, and the earthy smell of recently turned soil from nearby gardens and fields. The marketplace was now a hub of gentle activity. Merchants called out softly to attract customers, their voices carrying over the hum of the town. A cloth merchant displayed rolls of fine linen and wool, their threads catching the sunlight in shades of deep blue, crimson, and cream. Women paused to touch the fabric, fingers brushing against the soft threads, murmuring softly to one another about patterns, quality, and the designs their families would wear. Children lingered at their mothers' sides, eyes wide at the colors, or tugged gently at sleeves to move along, eager to continue exploring the morning streets. Nearby, the blacksmith's hammer rang out once more, steady and rhythmic, echoing across the town. Sparks flew from the anvil as iron met steel, each strike purposeful and precise. The blacksmith worked on a new set of horseshoes for a farmer's team, his muscles moving with trained ease. Sweat dotted his brow, though the morning air kept him cool. Apprentices watched attentively, learning the careful motions, the control of heat, and the patience required to shape raw iron into objects that would last for years. The clanging of metal mingled with the creak of cartwheels, and the occasional neigh of a horse, forming a symphony of labor that marked the town's heartbeat. At the apothecary, jars of herbs and dried roots caught the sunlight streaming through the window. The apothecary arranged fresh bundles of chamomile, lavender, and sage, preparing them for sale or for use in remedies. Gentle hands measured powders and mixed tinctures with care, noting each quantity in neat, flowing script in his ledger. Customers arrived one by one, seeking cures for colds, fevers, or simply advice on wellness. Their conversations were low and polite, carried in the soft cadence of a town where voices were raised only when necessary, and respect was woven into every interaction. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, carriages rattled over the cobblestones, bringing travelers, merchants, and officials into town. Horses shifted their weight beneath drivers' gentle prods, nostrils flaring slightly in the morning air. Servants hurried alongside to assist with parcels or hold open doors, their movements practiced and efficient. The clatter of wheels was softened by the rhythmic patterns of daily life, blending into the chorus of voices, hammers, and birdsong. In the taverns, the morning meal was served to those who rose early. Bread, cheese, porridge, and stewed fruit were laid upon tables, and mugs of hot coffee steamed gently in the cool air. Travelers and townsfolk alike shared tables, exchanging news from other colonies or discussing plans for trade. The Raleigh Tavern was particularly busy, its rooms humming with conversation and the shuffle of footsteps across wooden floors. The fire in the hearth crackled steadily, reflecting light against polished wood, warming the room and offering a familiar comfort to all within. Meanwhile, children ran errands for their families, carrying small baskets filled with eggs, butter, or produce from the garden. Their laughter rang out as they passed doorways, dodging around carts and animals with nimble grace. Some paused to peer at the blacksmith's work, fascinated by the sparks, or at the apothecary's herbs, marveling at the strange shapes and colors. Adults greeted them with nods or gentle reminders to hurry along, their patience tempered by the understanding that these small tasks were part of growing up in Williamsburg. The town's architecture, exposed now in full morning light, revealed its charm in detail. Brick and timber framed the buildings, their steep roofs and shuttered windows catching the sun at angles that highlighted their craftsmanship. Gardens spilled color onto the streets, herbs, flowers, and vegetables thriving in carefully tended plots. Fences and gates bore the mark of diligent carpentry, straight and strong, while the occasional bench invited a moment of rest for passers-by. Even the courtyards of private homes glimmered with life, as laundry was hung on lines to dry and chickens pecked gently at the earth. At the College of William and Mary, students emerged from dormitories, their footsteps echoing faintly across the brick walkways. Books were tucked under arms, quills and ink bottles carried carefully in satchels. Some paused beneath trees to discuss the day's lessons, debating philosophy, mathematics, or the natural sciences. Others moved silently toward classrooms, focused on copying passages from texts, or preparing for recitations before their instructors. The atmosphere was alive with thought, with learning, yet calm and orderly, a reflection of the town's measured, deliberate pace. Even the governor's palace began to stir. Servants carried trays of food and water, preparing for the day's audience and routine. In the gardens, dew still clung to leaves, sparkling in the sunlight like scattered diamonds. Figures moved quietly, adjusting hedges or tending fountains, ensuring that the palace reflected dignity, grace, and the careful attention expected of the seat of authority. Guards shifted along pathways, their muskets polished, their watchfulness steady but unobtrusive. By mid-morning, Williamsburg was fully awake. The rhythm of work, study, and trade was steady, yet the town carried no rush, no urgent haste. Each movement had purpose. Each sound fell into harmony with the larger music of the streets. Cobbled stones, timbered homes, hearths, and markets blended together, a living tapestry woven from the labor, care, and attention of those who called the town home. In this harmony, Williamsburg thrived, not only as a place of trade and learning, but as a community, bound together by shared work, shared faith, and the quiet knowledge that life, though simple, was rich with meaning. The late morning was a time of balance, a moment when the sun illuminated not just streets and buildings, but the heart of the town itself. By the time the sun had climbed high into the Virginia sky, Williamsburg pulsed with life. The warmth of midday settled across rooftops and streets, brightening every brick and timber with a golden glow. Shadows shrank beneath doorways and fences, and the air, though warm, carried a freshness born of the early morning's cool. The town had fully transitioned from gentle awakening to steady motion, the rhythms of daily labor now strong and consistent. The marketplace was alive with energy. Merchants called out to passers-by, their voices louder and more insistent than in the morning, though still polite, urging customers to examine the fruits of their trade. Baskets of apples, peaches, and pears glimmered in the sunlight, stacked neatly on tables, while tubs of fresh vegetables, beans, cabbages, and carrots, waited to be weighed and purchased. Cloth merchants spread their fabrics wide, ribbons and lace fluttering in the gentle breeze, catching the eyes of women seeking materials for gowns or mantles. Children lingered, fascinated by colors and textures, but parents guided them carefully, balancing curiosity with purpose. Craftsmen worked steadily, each sound forming part of Williamsburg's midday symphony. The blacksmith's hammer rang with vigor, sparks leaping high as iron met steel. Nearby, the wheelwright fitted fresh wheels to a cart, his hands skilled and sure, the smell of sawdust and tar mingling with the blacksmith's fire. The apothecary carefully ground herbs and roots, powders dusting the counter, while he tended to customers who required medicines for ailments both minor and severe. Every motion carried care, every task demanded focus, and the town thrived on this quiet diligence. Carriages rattled along Duke of Gloucester Street, wheels clattering against cobblestones, hooves clopping rhythmically. Servants guided their masters, steadying trunks or carrying parcels, the coordinated movement forming a pattern almost choreographed. Travelers from nearby colonies paused to purchase supplies or speak with merchants. Their accents varied, their words painting a mosaic of life beyond Williamsburg's borders. Taverns, now bustling, provided refreshment and conversation. Hot bread, cheese, and stews filled tables, mingling with the scent of coffee and the faint smoke of the hearth. Patrons spoke of politics, trade, and the news from England, yet even debate here carried an undertone of respect, each voice tempered by civility. Children continued to move through the streets, some running errands, others exploring with care. Their laughter rang out, blending with the sound of hammers, wheels, and voices, a lively counterpoint that reminded the town's inhabitants of continuity, of generations growing up within these cobblestones, learning the rhythms of life, the responsibilities of labor, the quiet joys of small discoveries. Some paused at the blacksmith's forge, eyes wide as the fire flared, while others lingered near the apothecary, fascinated by jars of colorful powders and herbs, each container seeming a mystery to uncover. The college was particularly active at this hour. Students moved briskly from one lecture hall to another, books clutched beneath arms, quills ready for notes. Professors paced with deliberate gestures, instructing young minds in Latin, philosophy, and the natural sciences. Debates echoed in corridors, voices raised briefly before settling again into polite discourse. The energy here was intellectual, vibrant, yet orderly, the work of learning as structured and purposeful as the trades practiced in the streets outside. At the governor's palace, servants moved swiftly to prepare for visitors and officials, polishing brass fixtures, arranging furniture, and laying out documents with precision. The gardens shimmered in the high sun, dew long gone, flowers vibrant in their carefully tended beds. Guards paced the pathways, muskets at the ready, their movements steady, their watchful eyes catching the details of every corner. The palace, while a center of authority, also mirrored the life of the town, structured, purposeful, and alive with the quiet hum of activity. Amid the bustle, moments of calm persisted. A woman paused by a fence to greet a neighbor, exchanging news of births, harvests, and shared experiences. A man lifted a child briefly to see the cobblestones, pointing to the patterns and cracks as though teaching history through the town itself. Even the animals joined the rhythm, horses shifting beneath harnesses, dogs wandering the lanes, hens scratching at loose grains, their presence grounding the town in natural continuity. The sun climbed higher still, illuminating rooftops and courtyards, highlighting the architectural charm of Williamsburg. Brick chimneys rose proudly above the streets, timbered walls framed windows where curtains fluttered softly in the warm breeze. Gates opened into gardens and courtyards, each home alive with activity yet bound together in the shared pulse of the town. Cobbled streets carried the weight of countless footsteps, worn smooth by years of steady use, a reminder that life in Williamsburg moved not only in the moment, but across generations. By early afternoon, Williamsburg existed as a living organism. Every sound, the hammer, the wheel, the voices, the laughter, formed a symphony, each note contributing to the town's steady rhythm. The marketplace, the workshops, the taverns, the college, and the palace each held their own energy, yet all were connected by the same sunlit streets, the same cobblestones, the same communal heartbeat. The town was alive, vibrant, and thriving, a testament to diligence, care, and the quiet pride of its people. As the afternoon sun leaned lower toward the western horizon, Williamsburg entered a softer, slower pace. The brilliance of noon mellowed into a warm, golden glow, stretching long shadows across cobblestones and timbered walls. The air was still rich with scents, freshly baked bread, herbs from gardens, and the faint tang of iron from the blacksmith forge, but now carried a subtle hint of earthiness, a reminder of labor winding down, of chores nearing completion. The marketplace began to quiet slightly. Merchants continued their trade, but their calls softened, more leisurely now, as buyers had made their selections and the busiest part of the day passed. Baskets of produce, fabric, and wares that had flown from shelves in the morning now sat waiting for later customers or were carefully packed away for tomorrow. Women inspected cloth and utensils with a measured pace, discussing the household needs of the day, while children clung to skirts or ran briefly along the street, their energy still high but contained within the boundaries of watchful eyes. In the workshops, craftsmen were still at work, but their motions carried the calm of nearing completion. The blacksmith tested the last of the newly forged horseshoes, listening to the soft ring of iron against steel, then wiped his hands and examined the tools that had served him throughout the day. Sparks still flickered occasionally, but the heat of the forge, while steady, no longer demanded the same urgency. Apprentices began tidying their benches, stacking hammers and tongs, sweeping away the remnants of coal and metal filings. Work for the day would soon conclude, leaving behind the quiet pride of a job well done. The apothecary, too, moved slowly as the afternoon waned. Herbs were stored carefully in labeled jars, powders swept into neat piles, and unfinished tinctures set aside to rest. Visitors continued to come, though less frequently than in the morning, seeking advice or remedies for minor ailments or preparing for the upcoming evening. Each interaction was calm, deliberate, measured with patience and care. The apothecary's gaze often drifted toward the window, watching shadows stretch longer across the street, marking time as much by light as by the ticking of his small clock. Children paused in their errands, pausing to watch animals in yards and gardens. Chickens clucked softly while pecking at the dirt. A horse shifted beneath its harness, and a dog lay in the shade of a doorway, observing the world with quiet attentiveness. Lessons learned in the morning, responsibility, attentiveness, care, mingled now with play, small victories of balance between duty and joy. Parents called them back to tasks with gentle voices, the tone warm rather than commanding, a reflection of the softer rhythm of the late afternoon. Taverns and inns adjusted their pace accordingly. The midday crowd thinned slightly, leaving tables open for travelers arriving later in the day. Fires were stoked once more, not with urgency, but for comfort. The smell of stews and roasted meat began to rise, blending with the lingering scent of morning coffee and baked bread, creating a calm yet enticing aroma that drifted into the street. Patrons who lingered spoke quietly, their conversations more reflective than earlier in the day, discussing harvests, family matters, or news from neighboring towns. At the college, the students concluded recitations and debates, gathering their books and preparing to leave for the day. Professors walked slowly through corridors, observing the orderly exodus, their voices gentle but precise in final instructions. Some students paused in courtyards to converse, the sun casting long shadows across brick paths and manicured lawns. The gardens surrounding classrooms glimmered in the late sunlight, flowers vibrant, dew long gone, yet the colors rich and steady. Knowledge and labor, study and craftsmanship moved together in Williamsburg as seamlessly as the light sliding across the rooftops. The governor's palace reflected the slowing pace of the town. Servants tidied halls and prepared spaces for the evening, adjusting furniture, polishing silver, and arranging flowers from the gardens. Guards continued their watch, but their steps carried the calm assurance of a day's work nearly complete. The palace itself seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the town, poised, dignified, aware of authority but gentle in its presence, a center that mirrored the balance and measured order of Williamsburg's streets. Even nature seemed to adopt the softer pace of the afternoon. Birds fluttered quietly among branches, settling on rooftops or in the gardens to rest between flights. A gentle breeze stirred leaves, carrying the sense of earth, wood, and blooming herbs through the streets. The sky was a palette of soft blues and pale golds, streaked with the occasional wisp of cloud. The sunlight touched every corner of the town with warmth, lingering longer on windows and walls, creating a gentle glow that invited pause and reflection. In homes, families began to prepare for the evening. Kitchens were alive with soft clatter as fires were stoked for the evening meal. Bread was sliced and vegetables were arranged. Children washed hands and faces, their play winding down in preparation for supper and the gathering of the household. Conversations softened, stories were shared, and the warmth of togetherness became more pronounced, filling homes as the sun edged closer to the horizon. By late afternoon, Williamsburg existed in perfect balance between activity and stillness. Work continued, but the urgency had faded. Labor carried a satisfaction born of completion. Streets hummed with movement, yet calm and reflection settled over all, signaling the approach of evening. The town's rhythm was deliberate, each heartbeat measured, each sound part of the living symphony of life, and as the sun prepared to dip beyond the horizon, shadows grew long, golden light softened, and Williamsburg began its gentle transition toward night, toward the quiet hours when the town would rest once more, cradled by moonlight and dreams. As the sun dipped further toward the western horizon, Williamsburg began its gentle transformation into evening. The bright gold of afternoon softened into warm amber, casting long, gentle shadows that stretched across the cobblestones and timbered walls. Windows glowed with the last touch of sunlight, reflecting a deepening warmth across the streets. The town slowed, not with silence, but with a softer rhythm, the pulse of life shifting from labor to reflection, from duty to home. The blacksmith finished the last of the day's work, carefully setting down his tools. The forge's fire, once roaring, glowed quietly, coals dimming to a steady warmth. Sparks no longer leapt into the air, but the lingering heat carried the memory of labor accomplished. He wiped sweat from his brow and stretched his arms, feeling the satisfaction of a day's craft completed. His apprentices tidied the workspace, stacking hammers, tongs and bellows, and sweeping coal dust from the floor. Soon the forge would be dark, but for now, it still held the warmth of purpose, of work that mattered to every horse, cart, and tool that passed through Williamsburg. In homes along the main street, the soft sounds of families preparing for evening filled the air. The clatter of pots and pans from kitchens mingled with children's laughter, now quieter and more playful, their energy spent from the day's activities. Mothers called gently for hands to be washed, for hair to be brushed, for small tasks to be completed before supper. Fathers returned from errands or workshops, sharing brief updates with their families, or pausing at the doorway to breathe in the crisp evening air. The warmth of household life spread outward, softening the edges of the cobblestone streets and echoing gently across timbered walls. The apothecary arranged his herbs and powders one final time for the day. Jars were cleaned, labels checked, and fresh bundles of lavender and chamomile set aside, not for sale, but for the night, for use in teas and remedies as needed. The door was closed softly, a candle burning in the window to mark the shop as still alive, even as the town moved into twilight. He paused for a moment, listening to the distant sound of children's play fading, the rhythmic steps of the watchman passing by, and the soft clatter of carriage wheels carrying travelers on their way. Williamsburg moved steadily, yet deliberately, toward the calm of night. In the marketplace, merchants gathered what remained of their goods, packing baskets and folding fabrics. The scent of fresh bread lingered faintly near the baker's stall, while fruits and vegetables, now unsold, were carefully stored or prepared for tomorrow's trade. Conversation slowed. Deals were finalized or postponed until morning. Children, lingering for a moment, were gently shepherded home, their voices fading with the last light. The town square, once bright with activity, now hummed with a quieter, more reflective energy, a place where the day's labors began to dissolve into evening's peace. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, lanterns began to be lit. Their soft glow cast pools of warm light onto the cobblestones, creating gentle circles that invited passers-by to move within them with care. The flames' flicker danced against timbered walls, and window panes reflected the amber glow, blending with the final sunlight in a delicate harmony. Carriages, once bustling with midday trade, moved slower now, carrying families, goods, or travelers toward taverns or inns for the night. Horses shifted gently, aware of the slowing pace, their hooves lighter against the cooled cobbles. Taverns and inns, too, transitioned seamlessly into evening. Fires were stoked to warmth, filling rooms with gentle heat. Tables were prepared for supper, candles placed to illuminate faces without harsh glare. Patrons settled in for meals of stews, fresh bread, and roasted vegetables, their conversation calm and reflective, discussing family, work, or the day's news. The Raleigh Tavern echoed with the low hum of voices, laughter subdued, as travelers and townsfolk alike enjoyed the comfort of a shared evening. Children's play gradually gave way to quieter activities. Small hands folded over books, scraps of paper, or toys, minds still exploring, but bodies resting. Parents guided them gently, soft reminders of bedtime routines blending with stories or gentle songs. Lullabies drifted from windows, carried across the streets in the cool air. The sound was faint but persistent, a thread weaving together households, a shared rhythm across Williamsburg. In gardens and yards, the last work of the day concluded. Wells were covered, tools gathered, and chickens led into coops. Herbs and vegetables were checked one final time, water sprinkled if needed, and fences inspected for security. The natural world mirrored the town's transition. Birds quieted, animals settled, and the wind carried a cooler, gentler breeze. The evening brought a sense of calm completion, a deep breath after the energy of the day. Even the governor's palace reflected this quieting. Servants moved efficiently but without haste, adjusting flowers, straightening chairs, and preparing spaces for evening receptions or family gatherings. Guards remained vigilant but composed, their presence steady, a reminder that security did not fade even as life slowed. The palace, bathed in golden light and soft shadows, seemed to embody the balance of authority and care, mirroring the calm grace that spread across the town. As night approached, Williamsburg was caught in a delicate balance. The day's labors had ended. The streets were quieter, yet life still hummed in a soft, deliberate rhythm. Lanterns glimmered, fires crackled, and windows glowed with warmth. Families gathered, meals were shared, and the town breathed in unison, its pulse steady and comforting. The transition from day to night was gentle, a reminder of continuity, of the measured care with which life unfolded here, day after day, in the heart of Colonial Williamsburg. Night had fully arrived in Williamsburg, though it carried no sudden darkness, only a soft descent of shadow across streets and rooftops. Lanterns glimmered from doorways and windows, their warm, flickering light pooling against the cobblestones. Timbered walls reflected amber glows, and the quiet hum of life softened to a gentle murmur, as though the town itself exhaled after the day's steady rhythm. The blacksmith had long since extinguished his forge, the coals cold, the tools neatly stacked, the work of the day complete. He paused for a moment at the door of his workshop, listening to the subtle symphony of evening. The soft rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant bark of a dog, the faint clip-clop of a horse returning to its stable. A sense of satisfaction lingered in his chest. Labor, however arduous, had purpose, and purpose carried a quiet joy. Families moved gently within their homes. Candles were lit on tables and mantels, casting shadows that danced across walls decorated with simple but cared-for paintings, shelves of books, and small trinkets of daily life. Children's voices softened, laughter now came in whispers or was replaced by sighs of sleepiness. Mothers guided little ones toward beds, pulling covers snug, brushing hair from foreheads, and whispering gentle stories. Fathers lingered for a few moments at doorways or windows, gazing at the soft glow of lanterns outside, feeling the quiet pride of a day fulfilled. In the apothecary, the day's work was concluded. Jars of herbs, powders, and dried roots were closed, labeled, and carefully arranged, the faint scent of lavender and sage lingering in the air. The candle on the counter flickered low, its glow reflecting in the glass of neatly lined bottles. The apothecary took a moment to sit, resting hands tired from measuring, grinding, and mixing. Outside, the streets were quiet, save for the slow footsteps of the watchman and the occasional sound of a carriage moving softly through the lanes. Night had settled firmly over Williamsburg, and in its calm, there was a feeling of completion, of security, of endurance. The marketplace, once alive with the chorus of trade, was now hushed. Stalls were empty, goods stored away or locked, tables cleared of the day's offerings. The faint smell of herbs, bread, and wood smoke lingered, a reminder of life that had moved here only hours before. The few remaining pedestrians moved with care, their lanterns casting elongated shadows on cobblestones worn smooth over decades. Conversations were rare, replaced by the quiet rhythm of footsteps and the occasional neigh of a horse. Taverns glowed warmly from within, fires burning steadily, but the energy had shifted. Patrons spoke softly, sharing reflections of the day, reading letters by candlelight, or quietly enjoying the evening meal. The smell of stew and roasted meat filled rooms, mingling with the soft hum of conversation and the flicker of flame. Some travelers had settled for the night, while locals lingered for a moment, savoring calm after labor. The Raleigh Tavern, once bustling, was now intimate, its energy steady and gentle, a haven for conversation and reflection as darkness deepened. The college was silent. Students had returned to their lodgings, books closed, quills laid aside. Professors walked the dim corridors briefly, ensuring the halls were secure, their lamps flickering faintly as shadows stretched across floors and walls. Courtyards were deserted, save for the occasional owl perched on a branch, observing the world below with quiet attentiveness. The gardens, now bathed in soft moonlight, held only the whisper of wind through leaves and the faint rustle of small creatures moving unseen. The governor's palace shimmered softly in the night. Lanterns glowed in the hallways and gardens, fires burned gently in hearths, and guards moved in steady, watchful patrols. The palace seemed to breathe with the town itself, calm, orderly, alive with purpose, yet at peace. Servants moved quietly, attending to final tasks, checking windows and doors, making sure all was in readiness for the night. Even in authority, in the grandest house of Williamsburg, the rhythm of life followed the same pulse that bound the town together: care, diligence, reflection, and rest. Outside the homes, the streets lay in quiet anticipation of deeper night. Horses stood still in stalls, shadows resting against fences, lanterns swaying gently in doorways. The wind carried the scent of wood smoke and herbs, mingling with the faint aroma of evening meals cooking indoors. The moon, pale and steady, rose slowly above rooftops, casting silver light over the cobblestones, illuminating the town in a glow that was soft yet complete. Even the watchman, patrolling the quiet lanes, felt the shift in rhythm. His lanterns swayed with each step, casting moving circles of light on the ground. He paused occasionally, listening to the subtle movements of the town, the gentle stir of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the faint rustle of a horse shifting in a stall. The town was alive, yet entirely still, its heartbeat slow and steady, echoing through every lane, every roof, every hearth. And so, Williamsburg settled into deep evening. The day's labours were concluded, streets emptied, and homes glowed softly in lantern and candlelight. The town of Williamsburg lay under a velvet sky, the moon climbing higher, casting silvered light across rooftops and cobblestones. Night had deepened into quiet stillness, and the air carried a coolness that settled gently on the town's wooden beams and brick walls. The streets, once filled with the rhythm of labour, trade, and laughter, were now silent, the occasional sound amplified against the calm. Footsteps, a distant bark, or the soft whinny of a horse punctuated the night, each note carried clearly across the cool air. In the homes along Duke of Gloucester Street, families rested. Candles burned low or had been extinguished entirely, leaving only the faint glow of moonlight to illuminate simple rooms. Children slept beneath blankets of wool and linen, their faces peaceful, still marked by the day's activities. Parents, too, rested, reclining in chairs or lying beside little ones, their minds gently reflecting on the labour and joys of the day. The warmth of fires continued in hearths, casting a soft glow that mingled with the moonlight. And even as sleep took hold, the comfort of home remained vivid, a gentle protection from the darkness outside. The blacksmith's forge was cold, the coals long extinguished. Tools lay neatly arranged, the hammer resting atop the anvil, tongs stacked in careful order. The workshop was silent, yet it retained the memory of labour, the lingering scent of iron, the faint heat that remained in the stones, the quiet resonance of metal shaped by skilled hands. Outside, the last sounds of footsteps faded, and only the occasional rustle of leaves in the night breeze disturbed the deep stillness. The apothecary's shop was dark, its jars and bottles casting faint shadows in the moonlight that streamed through the windows. Herbs hung from beams, swaying gently in the draught, releasing a faint aroma of sage, lavender, and rosemary. The quiet was profound, broken only by the distant chirp of crickets or the soft creak of a sign swinging in the night air. Inside, the apothecary rested as well, seated in a chair by a dying candle, reflecting on the day's work, the remedies prepared, the customers served. The world outside was still, yet within each room, life persisted quietly, patiently, awaiting morning. Even the marketplace, emptied and packed away, retained traces of the day. Stalls stood dark, tables cleared, baskets stacked and ready for tomorrow. The scent of fresh produce, bread, and herbs lingered faintly, a ghost of activity now gone. Shadows from nearby lanterns and windows stretched long across the cobblestones, mingling with the silvered light of the moon. Small animals stirred quietly. Hens shifted in coops, cats prowled silently, and a horse nickered softly to a companion. The town's living creatures continuing a muted rhythm even as human activity slept. The College of William and Mary was hushed. Dormitories lay silent, classrooms dark. Only the occasional owl called from the gardens, its wings stirring softly in the night. Books remained open on desks where students had studied late, quills resting as though paused mid-thought. The gardens glimmered in the moonlight, dew beginning to form again as the night's cool settled. Every path, every hedge, every window was still, yet filled with the quiet life of study, reflection, and preparation for the next day. The governor's palace, stately and grand, was cloaked in shadows. Lanterns glimmered faintly in hallways, fires burned low in the hearths, and guards patrolled slowly, their footsteps measured and precise. Each movement was deliberate, a subtle hum of vigilance woven into the night stillness. Flowers in the gardens swayed in the cool breeze, fountains whispered gently in the background, and the palace, like the town itself, rested in the balance between quiet repose and careful watchfulness. Along the streets, lanterns swayed softly in the breeze, casting circles of light against the darkened walls and cobblestones. Windows, aglow with fire or extinguished entirely, reflected the silver moonlight in patterns that shifted with each flicker. The rhythm of the town was slow, deliberate, and nearly imperceptible, yet it persisted. The distant sound of water dripping, the low movement of a cat or dog, the gentle breathing of horses in stables, the quiet shuffle of the night watch. Williamsburg, though asleep, remained alive in its subtle, measured way. The wind carried whispers of the day's memories, laughter of children, the call of merchants, the rhythmic hammering of the blacksmith, the soft murmur of conversation in taverns and homes. All had faded, yet their echoes lingered, wrapped into the quiet fabric of night. Even in the absence of activity, the town's pulse continued, steady, slow, and reassuring. And so Williamsburg lay under the moon, a town breathing gently, resting but aware, alive in stillness. Homes and workshops, the college and the palace, streets and gardens, all conspired in quiet harmony. It was a night of calm reflection, of gentle watchfulness, of soft rest. The day had ended, yet life continued, carried forward in subtle movements, in moonlit windows, in hearths still warm, in dreams woven across the cobblestones and timbered walls. In the deepest hours of night, Williamsburg slept deeply, yet remained awake in the memory of its own existence, a living testament to care, diligence, and enduring rhythm. The first whispers of dawn crept softly over Williamsburg, brushing the tops of brick chimneys and timbered roofs with a pale, silvery light. The horizon, faintly tinged with soft pink and gentle gold, hinted at the day to come. Shadows, long and deep from the night, began to shrink and fade as the earliest light touched cobblestones and garden paths. The town, still hushed and steeped in the remnants of sleep, held a delicate balance between the stillness of night and the awakening pulse of morning. Within homes, the first stirrings of the day were subtle. A curtain shifted in a gentle breeze. A child stirred beneath a woolen blanket, or a parent quietly rose to tend the hearth. Fires, cooled through the night, were carefully rekindled, kindling embers that glowed faintly before flames danced once more. The scent of ash and warming wood mingled with the fresh aroma of morning air, a promise that life would soon resume in the familiar rhythm of labor and care. Outside, animals began to sense the coming day. Horses shifted in their stalls, stamping softly against straw, their breath visible in the cool dawn air. Chickens clucked and rustled, scratching for small morsels of grain, while cats prowled silently along fences, their eyes reflecting the gentle light. Dogs, now awake, padded softly through yards, tails low, observing the slow stirring of the town. Even the wind seemed to carry a hint of anticipation, whispering through trees and across gardens as though urging Williamsburg to rise with careful purpose. The blacksmith was among the first to awaken. He stepped from his home into the quiet streets, lantern in hand, observing the town bathed in soft light. The forge awaited him, cold and still, yet filled with potential. He moved with familiarity, stoking coals and testing tools, the early light reflecting off iron and steel. Each motion was deliberate and measured, a preparation for the day ahead, as the town's heartbeat slowly strengthened with his movements. Apprentices, emerging one by one, gathered their implements, their eyes bright with anticipation, eager to learn the craft once again under the watchful guidance of their master. Merchants began their routines, quietly preparing stalls and arranging goods. Fruit was carefully washed and polished, bread stacked in neat rows, vegetables displayed to catch the first passing glance of early customers. The marketplace, still empty, awaited the arrival of townsfolk who would soon traverse the streets, moving with purpose, curiosity, and the familiar cadence of daily life. The scent of herbs, woven into baskets or hung in bundles, mingled with the soft breeze, carrying faint reminders of the previous day and the freshness of what was to come. The apothecary opened his doors slowly, the hinges creaking softly in the morning quiet. Candles were lit, jars dusted, and powders arranged with care. Early patrons arrived, a neighbor seeking a simple remedy for a cough, a mother preparing herbs for her children. a traveller pausing to inquire about medicines for a long journey. The shop became alive in measured increments, each interaction deliberate and gentle, mirroring the town's careful emergence from night. The college too began its day. Professors moved through dim hallways, lamps in hand, ready to awaken young minds with lessons in Latin, mathematics, and philosophy. Dormitories stirred as students rose, the soft shuffle of feet on floors blending with distant voices and the low murmur of study. Courtyards, washed in the gentle colors of early dawn, shimmered with dew, reflecting light that was at once fleeting and enduring. The gardens glimmered faintly, petals heavy with moisture, leaves trembling in the soft morning breeze. Knowledge, like life itself in Williamsburg, was about to resume its deliberate rhythm. Along the streets, lanterns still glowed faintly as the first pedestrians ventured out. Servants carried baskets or small bundles. Merchants opened shop doors, and travelers, some arriving from distant towns, paused to take in the town's early beauty. The cobblestones, damp from nightfall or morning dew, reflected the pale light, creating patterns of silver that guided footsteps with a subtle magic. Horses shifted gently under harnesses, readying for carriages and wagons to move once more along familiar routes. Even the governor's palace seemed to sense the first light. Servants emerged to adjust fires, tidy hallways, and prepare gardens. Guards, still alert, walked with measured steps, lanterns casting gentle circles of light across stone and grass. The palace's windows reflected the soft dawn, merging firelight and sunlight into a calm glow that bathed the surrounding town in warmth. Authority and care intertwined, as always, mirroring Williamsburg's essence. Disciplined, watchful, and alive with quiet beauty. By the time the sun began to lift over the horizon fully, Williamsburg had shifted entirely from night to morning. Streets hummed with measured activity, the marketplace beckoned, workshops glowed with renewed purpose, and the town's heartbeat grew steady and strong once more. Shadows retreated, replaced by soft light that embraced timbered walls, brick chimneys, and cobblestones alike. The rhythm of life resumed, deliberate, harmonious, and comforting, a reflection of the enduring continuity that defined every day in Colonial Williamsburg. Dawn was not sudden here. It was a gentle awakening, a quiet unfolding of the town's soul. Each lantern extinguished, each hearth rekindled, each footstep on cobblestone echoed in a pattern repeated countless times before, yet always unique in its unfolding. Williamsburg rose with grace, its people ready to weave the day's stories into the tapestry of history once again. By mid-morning, Williamsburg thrummed with life once more, the gentle awakening of dawn now replaced by purposeful movement. The soft light of early sun had deepened to warm, clear brightness, spilling across cobblestone streets, timbered facades, and brick chimneys. Shadows were shorter, more defined, and every corner of the town seemed alert, alive with the rhythm of work, conversation, and motion. The air carried a familiar blend of scents, fresh bread baking in ovens, herbs drying in sunlit windows, the earthy tang of soil, and gardens, and the faint smoke of hearth fires still burning to warm kitchens and workshops. The marketplace was once again bustling, a symphony of sights, smells, and sounds. Merchants called out their wares with confident voices, inviting passers-by to examine fruit, vegetables, cloth, and handmade goods. Shoppers moved deliberately among the stalls, baskets in hand, selecting items for the day and exchanging greetings with neighbors. The hum of conversation was steady, punctuated by the clatter of coins and the soft squeak of wooden carts rolling over cobbles. Children wove carefully through legs and baskets, curious about produce or small trinkets, their laughter light and buoyant against the morning air. In workshops, the blacksmith's forge roared back to life. Sparks flew as hammers struck iron, creating the familiar rhythmic clang that resonated across the street. Apprentices worked attentively, hands steady, eyes sharp, learning the delicate balance of heat and force needed to shape horseshoes, tools, and implements. The smell of molten iron mingled with coal smoke, rich and sharp. marking the air with the unmistakable essence of industry. Every swing of hammer, every careful motion, was part of the town's living cadence, the pulse of trade and craft echoing in every alley and corner. The apothecary's shop glimmered in the sun, windows open to catch the breeze. Herbs were sorted, powders carefully measured, and tinctures prepared for those who would seek remedies during the day. The gentle clinking of glass, the soft rustle of papers, and the measured footsteps of patrons created a quiet, comforting rhythm. Each visitor was attended to with care. A mother gathering herbs for her child, a farmer seeking relief for an aching back, a traveler requesting guidance for the journey ahead. The shop was alive with purpose, and even the faint scent of dried lavender and sage seemed to carry a message of calm assurance. Along the streets, the rhythm of horses and carriages added another layer of motion. Hooves clattered lightly on cobblestones, wheels turned with steady motion, and drivers called softly to one another, exchanging news or greetings. Deliveries were made, errands completed, and townsfolk navigated the streets with a sense of measured urgency, balancing efficiency with courtesy. The sound of hammers, calls, laughter, and conversation intertwined seamlessly, creating a living tapestry of daily life. In the college, scholars and students filled classrooms and courtyards with the quiet energy of study. Professors lectured in measured tones, hands gesturing to texts or chalkboards, while students copied notes, debated lessons, or practiced Latin and mathematics. Courtyards echoed with footsteps, the occasional murmur of discussion, and the rustle of pages turning. Gardens, now sparkling with dew, evaporating in morning sun, were tended carefully, plants trimmed, herbs gathered, and flowers admired for their beauty and utility alike. Knowledge, like trade and craft, was nurtured deliberately, woven into the fabric of the town's life with the same care given to every physical task. Homes were alive with activity. Breakfasts were prepared, fires stoked, and rooms tidied. Children, refreshed from sleep, played briefly in yards or helped with minor chores, their small voices blending with the greater hum of the town. Parents moved with practiced ease, balancing instruction, work, and care, ensuring that every member of the household was fed, clothed, and prepared for the day ahead. The rhythm of home mirrored the rhythm of town, each movement deliberate, measured, and purposeful. The governor's palace reflected the renewed energy of Williamsburg. Servants moved swiftly but quietly, arranging flowers, polishing silver, and preparing rooms for visitors or formal duties. Guards patrolled diligently, ensuring security while blending into the flow of activity. Lanterns that had burned through the night were now extinguished, replaced by the full illumination of the morning sun streaming through grand windows. The palace, stately and commanding, remained a center of order, its heartbeat synchronized with that of the entire town. By mid-morning, Williamsburg had fully emerged from the quiet of night and the gentle stirrings of dawn. Streets were alive, workshops rang with the music of labor, markets hummed with trade, and homes overflowed with daily life. The rhythm of the town was deliberate and enduring, a steady pulse that had continued through centuries, yet remained immediate, tangible, and intimate. Every step on cobblestone, every call from a merchant, every strike of hammer on iron was part of a continuous story of life, labor, and community. Even the air seemed infused with purpose. Birds chirped brightly in the gardens, wind rustled through trees, and sunlight danced on every surface it touched. Williamsburg existed in a state of harmonious balance, work and rest, instruction and play, craft and commerce, care and celebration, all interwoven seamlessly into the fabric of daily life. By mid-morning, the town was fully awake, its heartbeat steady and assured, ready to carry the lives of its people through the hours yet to come, guided by the timeless rhythm of Colonial Williamsburg. By late morning, Williamsburg pulsed with the steady rhythm of a town at full strength. The sun had climbed higher, warming brick, timber, and cobblestone alike, casting golden light over streets and gardens. Shadows were short, crisp and well-defined, reflecting the clarity of the day, and every corner of the town vibrated with motion, purpose, and conversation. Trade, craft, and daily life intertwined seamlessly, creating a tapestry of sound and energy that marked the heart of Colonial Williamsburg. The marketplace was alive with activity. Merchants called out to attract attention, offering fresh bread, colourful vegetables, fruits, and fabrics dyed in vibrant hues. The aroma of baked goods mingled with the earthy scent of herbs and vegetables, drawing townsfolk towards stalls in a steady stream. Children weaved carefully between adults, their eyes bright with curiosity, occasionally tugging at a parent's sleeve to examine a shiny coin or a small trinket. The chatter of buyers and sellers created a lively rhythm, punctuated by the soft clatter of wooden carts and the occasional neigh of horses harnessed nearby. In the blacksmith's yard, the forge roared with energy. Apprentices worked diligently under the watchful eye of their master, swinging hammers against red-hot iron. Sparks flew in arcs that shimmered in the sunlight, each strike sending tiny glowing fragments into the air. The blacksmith moved among his apprentices, correcting grips, adjusting posture, offering quiet instruction. He paused occasionally to examine a horseshoe or tool, turning it in his hands and listening to the ring of metal against metal. Every motion, every sound, was part of a living lesson in skill, patience, and craftsmanship. The air smelled strongly of iron, coal, and sweat, a pungent, invigorating mixture that carried through the street and marked the workshop as a center of labor and learning. The apothecary's shop was similarly alive. Herbs were chopped and bundled, powders carefully measured, tinctures shaken and labeled. The air was fragrant with lavender, rosemary, and the earthy scent of dried roots. Early customers mingled with newcomers. A mother purchasing chamomile for a restless child, a farmer buying liniment for aching joints, a traveler seeking guidance for a long journey. The apothecary moved deliberately, attending to each visitor with care and precision. His hands, skilled in preparation and measurement, moved confidently, and his voice carried a calm assurance that reassured those seeking remedies in the busy town. Children's voices carried across yards and streets as they played during brief breaks from chores or errands. Some skipped rope, others chased small animals in playful pursuit, while a few quietly helped with household tasks. Their energy added a bright, spontaneous layer to the structured rhythm of adult labor. Parents watched from doorways or windows, offering guidance when necessary, smiling at laughter that echoed lightly against the walls of the town. Even in the busiest hours, these small moments of play provided a necessary counterpoint, a reminder that life in Williamsburg balanced work with joy. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, tradesmen moved briskly. Carpenters carried planks of wood, their boots striking the cobblestones in steady cadence. Tailors delivered newly finished garments, their hands tucked carefully beneath cloth to protect delicate stitching. Merchants loaded and unloaded carts, moving goods to shops or customers with practiced efficiency. Horses, harnessed and patient, waited quietly, their tails flicking in acknowledgement of the commotion around them. The streets, alive with purposeful motion, formed a network of energy connecting every part of the town. In homes, kitchens were filled with the scent of cooking. Stews simmered in large pots, bread baked in ovens, and vegetables were chopped and prepared. Mothers and fathers coordinated meals, tending to children, washing dishes, and preparing for midday sustenance. Every household operated like a small, efficient unit, balancing chores, teaching, and care. The rhythm of domestic life mirrored the larger rhythm of the town, deliberate, purposeful, interconnected. The college courtyard echoed with student voices, soft, yet lively. Lessons continued with vigor, quills scratching on parchment, Latin phrases pronounced aloud, mathematical problems solved in careful steps. Professors moved among students, correcting mistakes, guiding understanding, and offering encouragement. In the gardens, students tended herbs and flowers, observing growth patterns, taking notes, and learning the subtle skills of observation that complemented scholarly instruction. Knowledge, like labor, was alive, practiced daily, and rooted firmly in attention to detail and steady engagement. Even the governor's palace reflected Williamsburg's midday energy. Servants moved efficiently, polishing silver, preparing meals, arranging flowers, and ensuring the grandeur of the building matched its functional purpose. Guards walked with steady vigilance, observing streets, gates, and visitors. The palace, a symbol of authority and refinement, was fully engaged in the life of the town, its heartbeat aligned with that of craftsmen, merchants, scholars, and families alike. By midday, Williamsburg was fully alive. Streets, workshops, marketplaces, schools, and homes moved together in a complex, harmonious rhythm. Each sound, movement, and scent contributed to the living pulse of the town. Every person, from child to master, merchant to scholar, played a role in maintaining the flow of life. The town's energy was at its peak, vibrant yet measured, a testament to the endurance, skill, and care that defined daily existence in Colonial Williamsburg. The sun shone brightly now, warming timber and brick, casting shadows that moved steadily with its arc. Horses shifted beneath harnesses. The air carried the mingled sense of work and life, and Williamsburg breathed as a single organism, alive in all its parts. Peak activity had arrived, yet beneath the bustle lay a quiet order, a harmony born from decades of tradition, discipline, and mutual care. In every corner, from the forge to the apothecary, from classrooms to courtyards, from homes to palace halls, life flourished in deliberate, enduring rhythm, the town fully awake and fully alive in the heart of colonial America. As the sun rose higher and began its slow descent toward the afternoon, Williamsburg settled into a rhythm that balanced labor with rest. Streets remained alive with activity, yet the intensity of mid-morning gradually softened. Merchants paused to catch their breath, apprentices leaned against workbenches for a moment of quiet, and townsfolk adjusted their routines to accommodate midday meals and small tasks that had accumulated since dawn. The town had reached its full energy, but now it moved with a gentle steadiness, rather than the vibrant surge of morning. In the marketplace, voices continued to carry, but the urgency of haggling and calling out goods was replaced by measured conversation. Customers lingered to examine fabrics, compare vegetables, or sample baked goods. The scent of warm bread and pastries mixed with the earthy aroma of herbs and garden produce, inviting those who passed to pause and enjoy the simple pleasures of the day. Children, now accustomed to the pace of adults, played quietly in corners of the square, chasing one another or examining small curiosities left on market tables. Their laughter was softer, gentler, marking a transition from the bright energy of morning to the measured cadence of early afternoon. In the blacksmith's forge, the rhythm of hammer on iron continued, though at a more deliberate pace. The heat of the day made labor strenuous, and apprentices wiped sweat from brows as their master guided them with careful attention. Horseshoes were finished, tools inspected, and repairs completed for local farmers and tradesmen who had waited until the day's work could be delivered. The blacksmith paused occasionally to sip water, to observe the movement of sun across the forge, and to reflect on the skill and patience required to transform raw metal into functional, enduring objects. Even in the midst of work, there was a quiet dignity in the craft, a sense that each task, no matter how small, contributed to the life and continuity of the town. The apothecary, too, found a rhythm suited to early afternoon. Customers arrived with specific needs, remedies for minor ailments, advice for children's health, or preparations for travelers embarking on journeys. The shop's interior smelled faintly of dried herbs, tinctures, and ground roots, a comforting blend that spoke of knowledge, care, and tradition. The apothecary worked methodically, grinding powders, measuring liquids, and mixing compounds, while offering gentle counsel to each visitor. The calm pace allowed both master and patron to reflect, exchange small stories, and participate in the subtle social fabric that bound Williamsburg together. In homes, kitchens were alive with the preparation of midday meals. Stews and soups simmered, bread baked, and vegetables were sliced and seasoned. Parents moved between tasks, balancing the care of children with the need to feed families and maintain domestic order. Children assisted where they could, fetching small items, stirring pots, or setting tables. Windows were opened to catch the light breeze, carrying the aroma of cooking into yards and along streets, mingling with the scents of the marketplace and forge. Meals became a quiet celebration of sustenance, a pause in the day to share food, conversation, and small joys. Along quieter streets, townsfolk paused to converse. Neighbors stopped to exchange news, share stories, or offer small favors. Taverns, though less crowded than in the evening, hosted gentle conversations over mugs of ale or cider, where adults discussed local events, politics, or news from distant towns. The air was filled with a sense of community, of awareness that each person's labor, care, and presence contributed to a collective life that extended beyond individual households and workshops. Even in moments of rest, Williamsburg's rhythm was shared, deliberate, and sustaining. In the college, students paused between lessons or lectures. Some moved to courtyards to enjoy the sun, sketching plants in gardens or quietly observing the patterns of nature. Others discussed studies in hushed tones, reviewing Latin passages or debating philosophical questions. Professors moved among them, offering guidance, correcting errors, and encouraging reflection. The gardens, still glistening from morning dew, were tended carefully, with herbs harvested for practical use in cooking or medicine, and flowers admired for their beauty. Knowledge, like craft and labor, was a daily practice, woven seamlessly into the living tapestry of the town. The governor's palace reflected the balance of early afternoon. Servants moved efficiently, but with a slower cadence than in the morning rush, tending to rooms, adjusting fires, and arranging gardens with care. Guards continued their rounds, vigilant yet unhurried, ensuring that the palace remained secure while the town's pulse carried steadily forward. Courtyards were serene. Fountains whispered gently, and flowers swayed in the light breeze. Even in the heart of authority, there was a moment of pause, a recognition that the day was best approached in measured rhythm, balancing duty with care. By early afternoon, Williamsburg had settled into a gentle harmony. Streets were lively without urgency, workshops and shops operated steadily, homes were nourished with food and conversation, and the town's heartbeat carried a steady cadence. The bright surge of morning had given way to reflection, care, and measured work. Every sound, from the tapping of hammer on iron to the quiet murmur of conversation, contributed to a living harmony that defined the town. Williamsburg's energy was not frantic, but deliberate, a sustained rhythm that carried through hours, connecting each person to the enduring life of the colonial town. Even as the sun reached its zenith, casting golden light across rooftops and cobblestones, there was a sense of continuity, of life unfolding in patterns established over decades. Labor, care, reflection, and community intertwined seamlessly. In this early afternoon, Williamsburg existed fully in its own time, a town alive with purpose and harmony, quietly thriving in the deliberate and enduring rhythm of colonial life. As afternoon waned, Williamsburg shifted once again. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast long, warm beams across cobblestone streets and timbered walls, painting the town in golden hues that softened edges and deepened shadows. The air carried a slight chill as sunlight faded, mixing with the lingering warmth of the day. Streets, once bustling with the height of midday activity, began to settle into a quieter rhythm. Workshops and markets were still active, yet the pace had slowed, signaling the approach of evening. The blacksmith's forge glowed with the last intensity of afternoon labor. Sparks flew sporadically as hammers struck iron, but the steady roar of the forge had softened. Apprentices wiped brows, stretched tired muscles, and completed final tasks for the day. A repaired plough, horseshoes ready for evening transport, tools returned to racks, coals banked for the next morning. The master blacksmith moved deliberately, inspecting work, offering guidance, and occasionally pausing to enjoy the satisfaction of a day's labor, completed with skill and care. Outside the forge, the faint smell of cooling metal mingled with the scent of nearby gardens, marking the passage of time as afternoon turned toward evening. In the apothecary's shop, activity mirrored the rhythm of the town. Herbs were bundled and stored for the evening, tinctures labeled and set aside, and powders returned to their jars with care. Patrons continued to arrive, seeking advice or remedies, but in smaller numbers than the morning rush. The apothecary moved quietly between customers, offering guidance with patience, his hands precise, his voice calm. The shop was suffused with the soft, fragrant aroma of herbs and roots, and the sunlight slanting through windows cast gentle, dappled patterns across shelves and counters. Each movement, each sound, contributed to the gentle cadence of late afternoon, a moment of transition between the bustle of midday and the calm of evening. Homes too reflected the slower rhythm. Families moved with measured care, tending to chores before the evening meal. Fires were rekindled in kitchens as dinner preparations began. Children, their energy tempered by the day's activity, helped where they could or played quietly nearby. Parents called gently, guiding, teaching and coordinating the household. Windows were open to catch the evening breeze, carrying the scent of simmering food and fresh air into the streets. The town's domestic life, like its workshops and markets, adjusted naturally to the softening light and the nearing close of day. Along the streets, merchants finished arranging goods, closing temporary stalls, or preparing wares for the next morning. Carts were returned to storage, and the murmur of commerce softened to occasional conversation. Travelers paused to admire the town in the late sun, while residents exchanged news or greetings with a calm energy. The marketplace, once alive with bustling movement, now carried a measured, reflective atmosphere, a gentle pause in the ongoing rhythm of daily life. Children's play slowed as well. Some lingered in yards, skipping quietly or observing insects and small animals. Others helped with household chores, delivering water, tidying spaces, or running errands for parents. Their laughter, once bright and lively in the morning, was now subdued, harmonizing with the quieter sounds of the town. Distant hammering, gentle conversation, the soft neigh of a horse, or the occasional bark of a dog. Even in their stillness, the children's presence contributed to Williamsburg's living rhythm, marking the transition from day's height to evening calm. In the college, students concluded lessons or moved to shaded courtyards to observe gardens, record notes, or engage in quiet reflection. Professors offered final guidance, ensuring that knowledge was both absorbed and respected. The gardens, still vibrant under the warm late sun, shimmered with dew evaporated by morning warmth, flowers bending slightly under the weight of the day. The scholarly rhythm mirrored that of the rest of the town, deliberate, orderly, and harmonized with the passage of time, a reflection of continuity and care. The governor's palace, grand and commanding, was alive with subtle motion. Servants arranged rooms for evening use, polished surfaces, and tended to fires, ensuring that warmth and light would continue to greet visitors or family members as night approached. Guards paced steadily, eyes alert, yet their movements matched the softer cadence of the late afternoon. Courtyards and gardens were serene, fountains whispered gently, and flowers swayed lightly in the evening breeze. The palace mirrored Williamsburg itself, vigilant yet peaceful, orderly yet welcoming, a center of life harmonized with the surrounding town. As the sun dipped lower, rooftops and chimneys glowed in rich amber and crimson, shadows stretching across streets and courtyards. Lanterns were prepared in homes, shops, and public spaces, ready to be lit as night approached. The air carried a quiet expectation, a gentle promise of calm and reflection. Horses were led to stables, final errands were completed, and the rhythm of labor wound naturally toward closure. Williamsburg's pulse remained steady, a living heartbeat carried by every resident, craft, and space. Late afternoon was a time of reflection and preparation. The town, at its fullest energy only hours before, now embraced a slower, measured pace. Streets, workshops, homes, and gardens all participated in the graceful transition from day to evening. Sounds softened, movements became deliberate, and a sense of harmony pervaded every corner. Williamsburg's life was both resilient and tender, a living testament to care, diligence, and enduring rhythm, ready to greet the coming night with calm and purpose. As the sun sank toward the horizon, Williamsburg transformed once more. Golden light spilled across rooftops and cobblestones, turning timbered walls into glowing amber and bathing the town in a soft, fleeting warmth. Shadows stretched long and thin, creeping along streets and alleys, while the air carried a gentle coolness, a subtle signal that day was fading into evening. A hush, delicate yet vibrant, settled over the town, an anticipation of candlelight, quiet conversation, and the soft hum of domestic life resuming its evening rhythm. Homes glimmered as fires were rekindled in hearths, the warmth of flames reflected in windows and on polished floors. Families gathered at tables, sharing meals prepared throughout the day. The aroma of roasting meats, fresh bread, simmering stews, and spiced vegetables mingled with the faint scent of wood smoke, enveloping each room in comfort. Children, tired from play and work, leaned against parents or nestled into chairs, their laughter gentle and contented. Conversation was soft but lively, recounting the events of the day, sharing small victories or challenges, and telling stories of neighbors, school, and craft. Even in the quiet of evening, life pulsed with warmth and connection. Outside, lanterns were lit, casting a gentle glow across cobblestone streets. The soft flicker of candlelight illuminated shop windows, doorways, and market stalls, creating pools of golden radiance that contrasted with the deepening blues and purples of the twilight sky. Shadows danced across walls and alleys, merging with the warm glow to create a living interplay of light and dark. Residents moved deliberately along streets, some returning from midday errands, others strolling with quiet purpose, while a few paused at corners to greet neighbors or admire the fading light. Williamsburg's evening carried the charm of community, a town connected by labor, care, and shared space. In the taverns and inns, the hum of conversation grew gentle and convivial. Travelers and locals alike found refuge from the cooling air, seated at tables with mugs of ale, cider, or warm spiced drinks. Voices rose and fell in laughter and anecdote, stories of far-off lands or nearby events blending seamlessly with quiet music or the soft scrape of a chair against wood floors. The tavern was both sanctuary and social hub, a place where the town's pulse slowed, yet remained vivid, alive in conversation, camaraderie, and subtle reflection. The blacksmith, having completed the day's work, tended to his tools and the fading coals of the forge. Sparks flickered as he stoked the embers once more before extinguishing them, ensuring readiness for the next day's labor. Apprentices swept floors, organized tools, and observed their master's careful movements, learning not only the craft itself, but the rhythm, patience, and respect required to sustain it. Outside the forge, the air carried a mixture of cooled iron, soot, and the faint fragrance of evening blooms from nearby gardens. The workshop, quiet yet purposeful, mirrored the town's shift toward calm. The apothecary's shop glimmered with candlelight. Shelves and jars, polished and arranged with care, reflected soft illumination as the master attended final visitors. Some came for remedies to carry home for children or elderly family members, others for advice before embarking on evening travels. Conversations were hushed, deliberate, and kind, reinforcing the calm intimacy of the evening. The soft aroma of herbs, roots, and tinctures mingled with the faint smoke of lanterns, creating a gentle sensory tapestry that enveloped both patrons and apothecary alike. Along the streets, horses were led to stables, carts secured, and tools returned to workshops. Children lingered briefly, chasing fireflies in yards or under the gentle gaze of parents, their laughter soft and fleeting. Neighbors paused in doorways, sharing small talk, exchanging favors, or simply enjoying the cooling air. The marketplace, now empty of most patrons, reflected the day's ebb, lanterns casting shadows across neatly stacked goods as shopkeepers closed doors or tidied spaces. Williamsburg's life, once a lively surge of movement and trade, had settled into measured, deliberate calm. In the college, classrooms were emptying as lessons concluded. Students wandered courtyards or returned to dormitories, some stopping to observe gardens, sketch flowers, or quietly discuss studies. Professors moved with care, ensuring each student was prepared for the morrow. The gardens, bathed in the soft glow of fading sunlight, shimmered with dewdrops yet to evaporate, reflecting both the day's labor and the delicate beauty of nature. Knowledge, like craft, commerce, and domestic life, wound down gracefully, becoming a quiet companion to evening's calm. The governor's palace, bathed in sunset, radiated grandeur softened by gentle light. Lanterns glimmered along walkways. Guards paced with calm vigilance, and servants completed tasks with measured care. Courtyards were still and serene. Fountains whispered softly, and flowers swayed in the mild evening breeze. The palace, emblem of authority and refinement, mirrored Williamsburg's overall rhythm. Watchful, deliberate, and harmonious, welcoming the transition from day to night with grace and quiet dignity. As the sun slipped below the horizon, Williamsburg entered the tender embrace of evening. Streets glowed with lantern light. Homes exuded warmth and comfort. Workshops and shops rested, and the town's pulse slowed into a gentle, enduring cadence. The chatter of children, the rhythm of labor, and the hum of commerce gave way to whispers, laughter, and reflection. Williamsburg, alive in every moment yet poised in stillness, prepared to welcome night with quiet beauty, community, and care, a living testament to the measured, enduring rhythm of colonial life. Night descended softly over Williamsburg, draping the town in a cool, deep veil. Candlelight flickered in windows, spilling warm golden patches onto the cobblestones and illuminating timbered walls in gentle, dancing glows. The streets, once alive with the rhythm of day, were now subdued, quieted by darkness and the natural slowing of life. A faint breeze carried the mingled scents of evening meals, fresh herbs, and the lingering warmth of fires, adding depth and calm to the nocturnal atmosphere. The town had entered a moment of reflection and rest, the final chapter of a full day. In homes, the hearths burned brightly, casting soft light over polished tables, chairs, and well-worn floors. Families gathered for final meals, breaking bread, savoring stews, and sharing quiet conversation. Children, sleepy from the day's play and labor, leaned against parents or older siblings, their eyes heavy but bright with satisfaction. Mothers and fathers spoke in gentle tones, guiding tasks, recounting small stories, or offering counsel for tomorrow's duties. Even in domestic simplicity, there was profound warmth, a shared understanding that the day's labor was complete and that home was a sanctuary. Lanterns were lit along streets, and shopkeepers extinguished their remaining candles, securing doors and ensuring goods were safely stored. Market stalls, once vibrant with vegetables, fruits, fabrics, and trinkets, were silent now, bathed in the mellow glow of oil lamps. The blacksmith's forge, cooled for the night, stood darkened, tools arranged neatly, embers extinguished, the faint smell of iron and coal lingering as a testament to the day's work. Apprentices, having completed chores and tidied the yard, returned home or prepared beds within their own modest rooms. The town's pulse, once vibrant and bustling, had slowed to a soft, sustaining heartbeat. The apothecary's shop, too, had quieted. Shelves reflected the flickering candlelight, jars and bottles neatly arranged, herbs stored with care, and tinctures set aside for tomorrow's preparations. The apothecary closed doors and drew the shutters, his hands clean, his mind reflective of the day's work, each remedy crafted with precision and care. Those who had come seeking guidance or relief earlier had departed, leaving a gentle calm that filled the room. A quiet reverence for knowledge, skill, and patience practiced in the service of the town. In the taverns and inns, the evening reached its final notes. Conversation softened, voices low and steady as patrons finished meals or sipped the last of their cider and ale. Candles reflected in polished wood, warming faces with gentle light, while musicians strummed quietly on lutes or fiddles, their melodies slow, deliberate and soothing. Travelers prepared for beds, chatting in hushed tones with hosts or fellow guests. The tavern, once a hub of mid-morning and afternoon activity, now offered comfort and reflection, a place where the day could be remembered, appreciated, and released into rest. Children in the town, having played and helped throughout the day, were guided to beds or small sleeping areas. Mothers tucked blankets carefully, whispered gentle stories, or sang soft lullabies to accompany the descent into slumber. Fathers paused at doorways, observing children's faces in the candlelight, ensuring warmth and comfort before quietly retreating. Even the smallest sounds, footsteps, a distant dog barking, the rustle of sheets, were part of the living rhythm of nightly care, a delicate echo of the town's enduring pattern. Along streets, lanterns glimmered in measured intervals, casting pools of light that guided night travelers and residents alike. Horses were stabled, carts secured, and workshops locked, every task complete and accounted for. Neighbors paused briefly to exchange final words or farewells for the night, their voices soft, careful not to disturb the quiet settling across the town. The cobblestones, warmed by sunlight earlier and now cooling under night air, reflected lanterns and moonlight in gentle patterns, creating a serene and contemplative atmosphere. The college was nearly empty, students having retired to dormitories or private quarters. Professors walked the grounds slowly, observing gardens and courtyards, their movements deliberate, eyes reflective of day's end. Notes were reviewed, quills set aside, and lanterns extinguished, leaving only the faintest glow from windows to mark activity. Gardens, brushed with the silver light of moon and stars, whispered gently as flowers bent in the evening breeze. Knowledge, like trade and domestic life, rested alongside its caretakers, prepared to resume with the coming dawn. Even the governor's palace, grand and imposing, softened under evening's glow. Lanterns illuminated walkways, fires burned in hearths, and guards maintained their rounds with quiet vigilance. Servants completed final tasks, polishing silver, arranging linens, and securing rooms. Courtyards and fountains, lit by soft lanterns, shimmered with reflective beauty, while flowers bent gently in the night air. The palace, symbol of authority and presence, reflected the same calm, deliberate cadence that flowed throughout Williamsburg, offering security and grace as darkness embraced the town. As night deepened, Williamsburg settled fully. Streets were quiet, only footsteps of the watchman or distant calls of animals breaking the stillness. Homes glowed softly with candlelight, families rested, and workshops lay silent. The town, alive in every hour of the day, had completed its rhythm, moving from dawn to night with deliberate purpose, care, and shared continuity. Even under the moon and stars, Williamsburg's heartbeat endured, steady and reassuring, a living testament to colonial life, diligence, community, and the comforting predictability of daily rhythm. The night had deepened, but Williamsburg had not yet fully surrendered to slumber. Candles flickered in windows, casting pools of warm light across streets still faintly alive with movement. Footsteps echoed softly along cobblestones as a few lingering townsfolk completed errands or returned home, careful not to disturb the growing quiet. The air was cool, carrying the scent of evening fires, simmering herbs, and the faint tang of iron from the day's labor mingling into a calm, comforting atmosphere. Shadows stretched long, blending the golden glow of lanterns with the silver shimmer of moonlight, marking the transition from day's closure to night's full embrace. In homes, fires in hearths burned low, sending gentle warmth into dimly lit rooms. Families moved with quiet purpose, mothers ensuring children were tucked beneath blankets, fathers securing shutters or checking lanterns, and older siblings offering whispered guidance or quiet stories before sleep. The aroma of evening meals lingered faintly, a reminder of shared sustenance, even as plates and cups were cleared away. The soft hum of conversation, brief and gentle, marked the final moments of wakefulness in each household, a delicate ritual of closure before the quiet of night fully took hold. Taverns and inns, which had offered warmth and camaraderie only hours before, were now subdued. The clink of mugs and the murmur of voices had given way to the soft scrape of chairs being tucked beneath tables, the extinguishing of candles, and the careful stacking of serving dishes. Travelers prepared for beds in quiet corners, while innkeepers moved steadily but quietly, ensuring rooms were ready and fires low, providing comfort without disturbing the town's emerging hush. Even the faint strains of a lute or fiddle, played for those who lingered, softened into a delicate, fleeting whisper, dissolving into the night. The blacksmith's forge, though cooled and dark, carried echoes of labor. The master walked the yard one last time, inspecting tools, stacking wood, and ensuring the workshop was secure. Apprentices had long returned to their homes, leaving behind only the faint scent of iron and soot, a lingering reminder of the day's toil. Each hammer strike, each crafted horseshoe or tool, was now a memory embedded in the rhythm of the town, a testament to skill, patience, and care. Outside, the breeze carried a mixture of faint smoke, dew-kissed grass, and evening herbs, blending into a sensory lull that prepared the town for rest. The apothecary moved through his shop one final time, checking that jars were secure, powders stored, and remedies carefully arranged. The faint candlelight reflected on glass and metal, highlighting the meticulous order that had guided his work throughout the day. Once satisfied, he extinguished the flame, leaving the shop in gentle darkness, scented with the quiet potency of herbs, roots, and distilled knowledge. The quiet of the room mirrored the growing stillness of the streets, a shared rhythm between craft and town. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, the last few town residents returned home, their steps soft against the worn cobblestones. Horses were led to stables, carts secured, and shutters closed one by one. The occasional whisper of conversation marked brief connections between neighbors, exchanged as they passed doorways before the town receded further into quiet. The rhythm of Williamsburg at night was deliberate, measured, and communal, a shared experience of safety, care, and continuity that stretched across households, workshops, and public spaces. Even in the college, dormitories reflected the town's gradual descent into rest. Students, having completed studies and sketches, rested in beds, some still murmuring with the day's thoughts, others already lost to dreams. Professors walked quietly through hallways and courtyards, extinguishing the last lanterns, ensuring doors were secure, and reflecting on the continuity of knowledge passed from one day to the next. Gardens, brushed silver by moonlight, swayed gently in the night breeze, fragrant with dew and herbs, serene witnesses to the town's nocturnal rhythm. At the governor's palace, the evening had settled with deliberate care. Servants extinguished fires and lanterns, guards paced their rounds with calm attention, and courtyards and gardens held their breath beneath the moon. The fountains whispered softly, flowers bent in the breeze, and the palace reflected both authority and grace in the night. Even in darkness, the town's heartbeat, steady, patient, and enduring, was visible in the rhythm of caretakers, watchmen, and the quiet diligence of residents. Williamsburg at this hour was a living balance between wakefulness and sleep. Candlelight flickered gently across streets, homes exhaled warmth, and the town's pulse slowed to a comforting, almost sacred rhythm. Every household, workshop, and institution participated in this nightly cadence, from the quietest corner to the grandest palace, forming a collective lullaby. The town had completed its day, yet remained alive in memory, presence, and shared continuity, poised on the edge of full slumber, ready to welcome the deeper quiet of late night. The town of Williamsburg lay draped in a deep, velvety darkness, the remnants of the day's golden light replaced by the soft glow of moon and stars. Lanterns flickered in doorways, their warm light mirrored faintly on cobblestones, but most windows were dark, homes wrapped in quiet slumber. A gentle hush fell over the town, broken only by the occasional distant sound. The soft neigh of a horse, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, or the measured footsteps of the night watchman making their rounds along the silent streets. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the lingering scent of the day's work. Smoke from hearths, the faint tang of iron from the blacksmith's forge, and the subtle fragrances of herbs and flowers that had survived the heat of the sun. Even in stillness, Williamsburg was alive, but in a rhythm markedly different from the day's energy. The heartbeat of the town had slowed to a soft, deliberate cadence. Each sound, each breath, each gentle movement, accentuated by the calm of night. In the marketplace, empty stalls and neatly stacked goods stood in quiet testament to the hours just past. Vegetables, fabrics, and trinkets rested untouched, awaiting the return of sunlight and customers. The faint creak of wooden carts settling into place and the occasional scuff of a boot on cobblestone were reminders that even in rest, Williamsburg maintained its order. The scent of recently baked bread, faint and comforting, lingered from kitchens nearby, mingling with the cool air, creating a peaceful, almost meditative atmosphere. The blacksmith's forge, dark and silent, stood as a monument to the day's labor. Tools were neatly arranged, and the embers of the forge cooled entirely, their warmth lingering faintly in the air. The apprentices, now home in their modest rooms, slept deeply, dreaming of hammers, horseshoes, and the meticulous work they would resume with the morning sun. Their master, too, rested, reflecting quietly on the day's accomplishments and the patience, skill, and care necessary to sustain both craft and town. The apothecary's shop, with jars and bottles lined like sentinels along the walls, reflected the soft candlelight of a single lantern left burning for emergencies. Herbs were stored safely, tinctures and powders returned to their jars, and the master apothecary moved quietly in thought before finally extinguishing the flame. Knowledge, preparation, and care now rested, ready to awaken again with the dawn. The faint aroma of dried roots, lavender, and rosemary lingered in the night air, a soothing reminder of the town's daily cycles. Homes, dark and quiet, were alive only with the soft breaths of sleeping children and adults. Mothers rested in chairs beside fireplaces, fathers lay in sturdy beds, and children dreamt of the day's games, errands, and small adventures. Blankets were tucked firmly around each sleeper, ensuring warmth, comfort, and safety. Dogs curled near hearths, the occasional soft snore breaking the silence, while cats slinked silently along walls, watching moonlight fall in irregular patches on wooden floors. Every household, from the grandest residence to the simplest dwelling, participated in the town's nocturnal rhythm, a quiet chorus of rest. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, the moon cast silver light on rooftops, chimneys, and cobblestones, highlighting architectural details often unnoticed in the day. Shadows shifted as the breeze moved branches and swayed signs of shops and taverns. Watchmen walked steadily, their footsteps rhythmic and deliberate. Lanterns held high to illuminate streets, ensuring the town remained secure. Their vigilance was both protective and symbolic, a reassuring presence in the quiet of night, reminding residents that care and order persisted even when labor had ended. In the college, dormitories were silent, classrooms dark, and courtyards bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Students lay in slumber, their minds resting after lessons, sketches, and observations of the day. Professors moved quietly among the halls, checking that lights were extinguished, doors secured, and notes safely stored. The gardens shimmered under the moon, flowers and herbs swaying gently in the night breeze, dew beginning to form as the temperature cooled. Even in sleep, the town's intellectual heart remained attentive, preparing for the return of the sun and the reawakening of knowledge with morning light. The governor's palace, imposing yet softened under silver moonlight, retained a quiet elegance. Lanterns glimmered along pathways, Fires in the hearths faded, and guards completed their rounds with calm precision. Courtyards echoed only the soft whisper of fountains and the occasional rustle of nocturnal animals. Servants, having completed their duties, rested, and the palace, like the town itself, entered a state of quiet reverence, holding its breath in preparation for the next day's bustle. Williamsburg at late night was a study in contrast, alive with memory, yet serene, vibrant in history, yet resting in the present. The streets, homes, workshops, and palaces were unified by rhythm, care, and deliberate order. Each sound, each shadow, and each flicker of lantern light spoke of continuity, diligence, and the human presence woven into the town's fabric. Under the cool moon and starlit sky, Williamsburg slept peacefully, its heartbeat steady and reassuring, ready to greet the coming dawn with renewed energy and purpose. Before the sun had even breached the horizon, Williamsburg lay in a delicate, almost sacred stillness. The night's deep shadow lingered, softened only by the faint, silvery glow of moonlight and the first hints of approaching dawn. Cobblestone streets glimmered faintly with the moisture of dew, each stone catching the subtle illumination and reflecting a subdued, ethereal light. The air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of earth, herbs, and the lingering warmth of hearth fires from the night before. In this pre-dawn hour, the town held its breath, balanced between deep sleep and the slow awakening that would come with the rising sun. Inside homes, the earliest risers stirred gently. Mothers rose to rekindle fires in the hearth, placing pots of water to heat and preparing small meals for those about to awaken. Fathers quietly stepped from bedrooms to stoke stoves or check that lanterns were ready for those leaving for morning duties. Children, still half dreaming, clung briefly to blankets, their breath slow and rhythmic, only to be coaxed gently toward wakefulness by the soft voices of caregivers. The warmth of home contrasted with the cool dawn air, creating a gentle cocoon, a small sanctuary in which Williamsburg's residents prepared for another day. Along the streets, the first signs of life appeared. The blacksmith's apprentice arrived early, lantern in hand, to prepare the forge for the day's labor. He fed the coals carefully, watching as embers glowed softly, reflecting in the darkened walls of the workshop. Tools were arranged, iron stock inspected, and preparations made to ensure that when the master arrived, work could begin efficiently and without distraction. The quiet rhythm of this early preparation was almost meditative, a dance of discipline, care, and anticipation. The apothecary's shop followed a similar pattern. Herbs were gathered, dried roots inspected, and tinctures checked for clarity and potency. A soft fire was started to warm the room, and lanterns were lit, casting steady light across shelves of carefully labeled jars. The apothecary moved with deliberate, practiced precision, preparing remedies that might be required early in the morning: teas for the sick, poultices for minor injuries, and tinctures for ailments both common and unusual. Each action was measured, each movement purposeful, blending skill with quiet devotion to the health of the town. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, the first merchants opened doors, their careful movements releasing the gentle creak of hinges into the still morning air. Stalls were prepared, produce arranged, and goods inspected. The faint aroma of bread baking in early ovens drifted through the streets, mingling with the soft scent of herbs, flowers, and the lingering coolness of night dew. Early customers, often farmers or tradesmen, moved silently from stall to stall, exchanging greetings in hushed tones, sharing news of livestock, crops, and local happenings before the day's busier hours fully commenced. Horses were led to stables for grooming and preparation, their hooves soft on damp cobblestones. Riders, often messengers or early laborers, mounted with quiet efficiency, their movements practiced, their attention divided between the animals and the rhythm of the awakening town. The sound of hooves echoed softly, a gentle percussion against the calm stillness, marking the transition from night to day. Even the occasional crow of a distant rooster or chirp of early birds contributed to the awakening symphony, blending human, animal, and natural rhythms into a cohesive, gentle orchestration. In the college, students rose with diligence, some already walking the grounds in the soft pre-dawn light, sketching flowers or observing gardens, others reviewing notes or reading by lantern glow. Professors moved among them with quiet guidance, offering advice, correcting sketches, or demonstrating techniques with patience. The gardens shimmered with dew, flowers bent under the early chill, and the air was filled with soft fragrance as nature and human endeavor harmonized in the town's early morning pulse. Knowledge and care intertwined, each step a preparation for the day ahead. The governor's palace, grand and still imposing even under the dim light, began to prepare for the day. Servants rekindled fires, polished surfaces, and arranged linens. Guards adjusted their posts, lanterns lit to mark entrances and walkways, and courtyards, previously silent, now reflected the first hints of activity. The palace, like the town itself, moved with measured grace, balancing authority with the calm, deliberate rhythm that defined Williamsburg from nightfall to dawn. As the first light of morning crept over rooftops, painting the timbered walls with shades of pink and gold, Williamsburg exhaled gently. Doors opened fully, windows reflected the sun's earliest beams, and streets, still dewy, welcomed the return of daily life. Children laughed softly, playful and tentative in the awakening air. Shopkeepers called greetings, preparing wares for the day's customers. Craftsmen began labor once more, and the town's heartbeat returned to a measured, deliberate cadence. Williamsburg, alive once more, celebrated the continuity of rhythm, night yielding to dawn, rest giving way to activity, and the enduring, shared pulse of a community bound by care, diligence, and history. With the sun fully risen, Williamsburg came alive in earnest. Golden rays streamed across rooftops, glinting off timber frames and polished windows and warming the cobblestones underfoot. The town, previously wrapped in pre-dawn hush, now throbbed with energy and purpose. The streets teemed with activity. Merchants arranged goods in vibrant displays, craftsmen hammered and sawed in open workshops, and children darted between doorways and market stalls, their laughter ringing like bells in the crisp morning air. The marketplace was alive with color and motion. Vegetables, crimson tomatoes, deep green beans, and pale onions were stacked neatly in baskets, their surfaces glistening with morning dew. Breads and pastries, freshly baked in early ovens, filled the air with comforting aroma, mingling with the scent of herbs, spices, and the soft tang of leather from saddlers' stalls. Merchants called greetings to passers-by, offering goods with practiced enthusiasm, while townsfolk examined wares, bartered politely, and shared news from neighboring farms and settlements. The rhythm of exchange, spoken words, measured steps, the rustle of cloth and straw formed a symphony of daily life, vibrant and sustaining. Workshops rang with purpose. The blacksmith's forge blazed brightly, hammering, striking iron with rhythmic precision. Sparks danced into the air, reflecting in the eyes of apprentices who watched attentively, learning each movement, each swing, each adjustment of tongs or hammer. Horseshoes, tools, and delicate iron fittings took shape under their hands, each piece a testament to skill, patience, and the craft that bound town and countryside together. The blacksmith's presence radiated authority tempered with care, his sharp eyes softened by pride in the apprentice's progress. The apothecary, too, was fully engaged in morning preparations. Jars were replenished with dried herbs, powders measured and labeled, and tinctures arranged meticulously along polished shelves. Townsfolk arrived with questions, ailments, or requests for guidance, and the apothecary offered advice with gentle authority. A mother asked for a remedy for her child's fever, while a farmer sought herbs to soothe a sprained wrist. The room was alive with quiet consultation, the air scented with rosemary, lavender, and chamomile, mingling with the warmth of the morning fire. Knowledge, like craft, became a living, breathing part of Williamsburg's daily rhythm. Children, released from morning chores or sent by parents on small errands, filled the streets with playful energy. They chased one another around corners, through alleys, and across open squares, their laughter punctuating the more measured cadence of commerce and labor. Some carried small baskets to markets, delivering eggs, herbs, or other simple goods to neighbors, while others paused to admire flowers, sketch animals, or peer curiously into workshops. Each child's step was a thread in the town's living tapestry, weaving together play, learning, and the small responsibilities that formed the foundation of communal life. In homes, breakfasts were hearty and communal. Families gathered around tables laden with bread, cheese, porridge, and fresh fruits. The clinking of cups and utensils punctuated quiet conversation, parents discussing plans for the day, children sharing discoveries or mischief from their early morning activities. Hearth fires burned steadily, casting warm light over faces, polished tables, and simple but sturdy furniture. Even the hum of household chores, washing, sweeping, tending animals, was absorbed into the greater rhythm of awakening life. Streets were busy with laborers and artisans on the move. Carpenters carried planks, cobblers adjusted shoes for awaiting customers, and farmers led animals to markets or pastures. Horses trotted with measured steps, their riders delivering messages or fetching supplies. Lanterns were unnecessary now, but their frames and glass occasionally caught sunlight, reflecting bursts of brilliance onto street walls and windows. The town, a living organism of interdependent work and purpose, displayed its pulse in every movement, every gesture, and every exchange. At the college, scholars resumed studies and lessons, gardens filled with diligent hands, tending herbs, flowers, and vegetables. Professors guided students in careful observation of nature, the arts, and mathematics, demonstrating methods and encouraging reflection. Courtyards echoed softly with the scraping of quills and low discussion, punctuated occasionally by the laughter of a student discovering the joy of learning. The sun, warm on stone and soil, energized the pursuit of knowledge, blending the intellectual with the daily life of the town. Even the governor's palace reflected the energy of morning. Servants moved briskly, polishing silver, arranging furniture, and lighting hearths. Guards maintained their posts with steady diligence, observing the comings and goings of townsfolk with calm attentiveness. Courtyards and gardens glimmered with sunlight, flowers opening to the warmth, fountains sparkling with refreshed water. The palace, while a symbol of authority and refinement, became a part of the larger rhythm of Williamsburg, blending leadership, duty, and the daily life of the community into a harmonious whole. Williamsburg, fully awake, thrived in the morning. Streets buzzed with purpose, workshops and markets teemed with activity, children played and learned, and homes glowed with domestic warmth. The town's heartbeat, steady and confident, matched the rising sun. Deliberate, interwoven, and alive with the shared rhythms of craft, commerce, learning, and community. Each individual, each household, each craft contributed to the larger tapestry, a living testament to diligence, connection, and the enduring beauty of colonial life. By mid-morning, Williamsburg was fully immersed in the rhythm of daily life. Sunlight poured generously over the timbered rooftops and cobblestone streets, bathing the town in warmth and clarity. Shops and workshops pulsed with movement. Every hammer strike, call of a merchant, and clip of a shears blended into a living symphony of trade, skill, and human endeavor. The air, rich with scents of fresh bread, herbs, ink, and sawdust, carried the vitality of a community in motion, each individual contributing to the pulse of the town. The marketplace was at its busiest. Farmers from surrounding fields displayed vegetables, fruits, eggs, and dairy, while artisans showcased handcrafted goods, textiles, and tools. Customers, townsfolk and travelers alike, moved deliberately between stalls, examining wares, exchanging news, and engaging in measured negotiation. The murmur of voices, punctuated by occasional laughter or the rhythmic stamping of a horse's hooves, formed a constant backdrop, a testament to the harmony of commerce and community. Children followed parents, carrying small purchases or observing keenly, learning early the flow of work, responsibility, and trade. In the blacksmith's forge, activity was at its peak. Hammers rose and fell with precise rhythm. sparks flying from glowing iron, reflecting across the soot-streaked walls. The master oversaw apprentices, correcting technique, offering guidance, and occasionally stopping to demonstrate the subtleties of shaping metal. Horseshoes clanged against anvils, tools were shaped and sharpened, and delicate ironwork for gates and hinges revealed the blacksmith's artistry alongside his practicality. The heat of the forge mingled with the cool morning air, creating a tactile awareness of labor, skill, and the balance of fire, metal, and human endeavor. The apothecary's shop, too, was alive with purpose. Townsfolk arrived with inquiries ranging from minor ailments to more complex concerns, seeking advice, remedies, and reassurance. The apothecary measured powders carefully, filled bottles with tinctures, and offered instructions with precision. Children brought scraped knees, mothers requested herbal teas for restless nights, and farmers sought treatments for sprains or colds. Each transaction, each consultation, was a dance of knowledge, care, and trust, highlighting the essential role of wisdom and skill within the community. The scent of dried herbs, boiling roots, and freshly ground powders filled the air, marking the shop as both sanctuary and instrument of health. Meanwhile, artisans and tradesmen in smaller workshops contributed to the town's pulse. Carpenters sawed and planed wood, measuring and assembling furniture and fixtures with meticulous care. Cobblers tapped and stitched leather shoes, their movements practiced and precise, reflecting both the utility and artistry of their craft. Tailors pinned and cut fabrics for coats, dresses, and cloaks, while apprentices observed intently, learning the delicate balance between accuracy and creativity. The sounds of saws, hammers, and sewing awls mixed into the larger rhythm of the town, a testament to diligence, patience, and human ingenuity. Children, now fully awake and released from morning responsibilities, filled streets and open squares with playful energy. They chased one another, laughed freely, and occasionally paused to watch a demonstration at a workshop or assist with minor tasks. Their voices carried above the marketplace's hum, a bright counterpoint to the rhythmic sounds of adult labor. In small corners, older children learned early lessons in trade, measurement, and social interaction, observing their elders and imitating movements with careful attention. Play, learning, and contribution were intertwined seamlessly, forming a living education in the heart of Williamsburg. Social exchanges flourished in the town square. Neighbors met to exchange news, share advice, or comment on the progress of crops, livestock, and local affairs. Discussions were lively but measured, reflecting the social codes of civility and respect that governed daily interaction. Travelers, arriving from nearby settlements, contributed tales of distant happenings, while merchants offered opinions on markets, prices, and new goods. Each conversation, whether brief or extended, contributed to a network of shared knowledge, community cohesion, and the collective rhythm of town life. The college courtyards and gardens were equally active. Students, now fully engaged in lessons and observation, tended plots of herbs and vegetables, recorded sketches of animals, or calculated measurements for geometry and architecture. Professors moved among them with quiet authority, demonstrating techniques, encouraging reflection, and fostering an atmosphere of curiosity and respect for knowledge. Every action, from tending a plant to observing the angles of a building, contributed to a sense of continuity, precision, and learning that underpinned Williamsburg's civic and cultural vitality. Even the governor's palace reflected mid-morning activity. Courtyards were swept, fountains refreshed, and staff ensured the palace remained in immaculate condition. Guards maintained measured patrols, observing the streets below with calm vigilance. The palace, while grand and formal, participated in the town's rhythm through deliberate, disciplined activity, balancing authority with care for the environment and community it oversaw. Sunlight glinted off polished surfaces, lanterns remained unlit but ready, and the palace seemed a silent partner in the orchestration of the town's daily life. By noon, Williamsburg pulsed with life at its full tempo. Streets, workshops, markets, and homes were alive with purpose, sound, and energy. Craftsmen labored with skill, merchants traded with precision, children played and learned, and every individual contributed to a rhythm that was at once deliberate, communal, and enduring. The town's heartbeat was steady, confident, and shared, proof of resilience, cooperation, and the enduring beauty of colonial life. Each moment, each sound, and each interaction wove together into the living tapestry of Williamsburg, a town alive with the constant, purposeful rhythm of human endeavor. The sun climbed higher, and Williamsburg entered the gentle lull that often followed the intensity of morning activity. Streets remained lively, yet a subtle calm began to weave through the marketplace and workshops. Merchants paused briefly to wipe brows, exchange a nod or greeting, or sip from mugs of water or warm tea, taking a quiet breath before the afternoon rhythm resumed. The air was still warm, carrying the mingling scents of fresh bread, herbs, leather, and iron, yet softened by the light afternoon breeze that rustled leaves and swept gently through open windows. In the marketplace, stalls were no longer overflowing with the initial excitement of the morning. Farmers tidied their displays, turning over baskets of vegetables and adjusting fresh fruits to catch the sunlight. Artisans arranged goods carefully, ensuring customers could see every piece with ease. The hum of conversation continued, though voices were softer, more measured, reflecting the slower pace of the early afternoon. Townsfolk moved with deliberate care, exchanging news of crops, livestock, and local happenings. Each transaction, each nod, each whispered greeting contributed to the communal rhythm, a quiet pulse sustaining the town in its steady momentum. At the blacksmith's forge, the heat of the day became more noticeable. The forge's embers glowed steadily, and the master oversaw his apprentices with quiet authority, pausing between hammer strikes to offer guidance. Horseshoes were finished and stacked neatly, delicate ironwork polished and inspected, and tools readied for delivery. Sweat glistened on foreheads, yet the rhythm of labor was meditative, almost hypnotic. The rise and fall of hammers, the hiss of cooling metal, and the soft clang of tools forming a gentle percussion that echoed across the yard. Even in this quieter time, the forge remained the town's heartbeat of craft and skill. The apothecary's shop hummed softly with quiet purpose. Herbs were ground and mixed, tinctures carefully measured, and consultations took place in hushed tones. Mothers brought children with minor scrapes, while farmers sought remedies for fatigue or bruised hands. The apothecary moved deliberately, aware that even in the slower hours, each action carried importance. The scent of rosemary, lavender, and chamomile remained strong in the air, mingling with the warmth of the fire, creating a calming atmosphere that contrasted with the energetic forge or bustling market. Here, knowledge and care intertwined, offering a sanctuary of gentle attentiveness in the heart of Williamsburg. Children, released from the more structured bustle of morning errands, filled streets with soft laughter and playful energy. Some chased one another through alleys and around corners, while others paused to observe artisans, sketching quietly or mimicking adult motions. Play was intertwined with observation, forming lessons in responsibility, skill, and social etiquette. Their voices, light and melodic, carried above the quieter sounds of adult labor, punctuating the early afternoon with innocence and curiosity. Even in this gentler tempo, the rhythm of life remained continuous, layered with sound, movement, and quiet learning. In homes, the aroma of midday meals filled kitchens. Pots of stew, freshly baked bread, and roasted vegetables were placed upon tables. Families gathered to eat together, exchanging words softly as heat from the hearth warmed the room. Children spoke of the morning's adventures, parents discussed plans for the afternoon, and servants moved quietly between spaces, tending fires, cleaning, and ensuring the household ran smoothly. The domestic rhythm complemented the public one, private care, nourishment, and quiet conversation, forming a counterbalance to the street's measured bustle. Along the main thoroughfares, horses and carts moved more slowly, carrying goods from farms or transporting finished products from workshops to homes and markets. Riders paused to check animals, rest briefly, or exchange news. The town's pulse, while less frenetic than morning, remained steady and deliberate. Sounds of hammering, sawing, and sewing persisted, but with a quieter, more reflective cadence. Even in its relative calm, Williamsburg was alive, and each resident, from the youngest child to the eldest craftsman, contributed to its enduring rhythm. At the college, students walked the courtyards and tended gardens, their movements calm yet purposeful. Professors guided lessons in observation, careful measurement and reflection, encouraging subtle understanding over rushed activity. The gardens shimmered with dew-soaked greenery, and flowers bent gently in the afternoon breeze. The pursuit of knowledge, like the work of craftsmen and merchants, was sustained not by haste, but by careful, deliberate attention, a lesson in patience, skill, and harmony with the town's daily rhythm. The governor's palace, majestic even in the slower pace of early afternoon, remained a center of quiet order. Courtyards and gardens glimmered in sunlight, fountains trickled softly, and guards maintained their posts with attentive calm. Servants polished surfaces, arranged linens, and ensured the palace's grandeur remained intact, blending the formal structure of governance with the steady flow of life in Williamsburg. Even as the town rested slightly from morning energy, the palace mirrored the town's rhythm, deliberate, precise, and harmonized with the daily pulse of community life. By early afternoon, Williamsburg's heartbeat had settled into a gentle, sustained tempo. Streets, workshops, markets, homes, and gardens moved in quiet synchrony. The town alive with measured motion and soft conversation. Life continued, each individual contributing through skill, care, and attention to craft, family, or learning. The sun illuminated every corner, revealing the town's textures: polished wood, worn cobblestones, glinting iron, and the soft flutter of curtains in open windows. Williamsburg thrived not only in action, but in presence, each moment a reflection of diligence, community, and enduring beauty. As the afternoon sun began its slow descent, Williamsburg shifted from the steady hum of midday into the more reflective tempo of late afternoon. Shadows stretched long across cobblestone streets, painted in amber and gold, softening the town's edges and signaling that the day was moving toward its final hours. The marketplace, once a hub of constant motion, now settled into a quieter rhythm. Stalls were tidied, goods carefully repacked or arranged for the next day, and merchants paused to catch their breath, wiping foreheads damp with sweat and sharing short, amiable words with neighbors. The clatter of hooves and carts grew less frequent as deliveries concluded and farmers began their return journeys to fields and pastures beyond town. Horses were brushed and fed, carts cleaned, and wagons stored carefully, reflecting the careful maintenance that allowed Williamsburg to function smoothly day after day. The soft neighs of horses and low conversation between handlers echoed through streets now painted with the deepening warmth of late afternoon sunlight, creating a tranquil counterpoint to the morning's bustling energy. Children, freed from much of their structured daytime duties, moved through streets and courtyards with playful abandon. Some chased each other along alleys, laughter spilling over walls, while others paused to help deliver goods to neighbors or assist younger siblings. Their energy had softened from morning exuberance into calm, purposeful activity, balancing work and play as they learned responsibility alongside joy. Occasionally, a ball would roll down a street, prompting a spontaneous game, or a small group would gather near a fountain to share whispered stories, their voices carried lightly by the warm breeze. Workshops and crafts continued, but with a gentler cadence. The blacksmith's forge, still warm from the day's labor, rang with fewer hammers, each strike deliberate and measured. Apprentices tidied tools, polished metal, and reflected on the lessons of the day, while the master supervised, offering careful corrections and encouragement. The rhythmic hiss of cooling iron mingled with the soft shuffle of feet, and the occasional murmur of conversation. Similarly, the apothecary's shop saw fewer visitors, allowing the practitioner to restock jars, arrange remedies neatly, and quietly prepare for the next morning, each action deliberate, mindful, and precise. In homes, the aroma of afternoon bread, stews, or fresh herbs filled kitchens. Mothers and older children tidied rooms, washed linens, or prepared the evening meal. Fathers returned from errands or workshops, removing aprons, wiping hands, and exchanging news with family members in gentle, unhurried tones. Hearth fires, tended carefully throughout the day, now offered warmth as the light softened, reflecting off polished surfaces, casting long shadows that danced gently on walls. Within these domestic spaces, calm routines and shared care balanced the activity still unfolding on the streets outside. The college, too, entered a quieter period. Students concluded lessons in observation, mathematics, or sketching, sharing notes and discussing discoveries in subdued tones. Professors walked the courtyard slowly, checking on plants, adjusting sketches, or pausing to encourage reflection on the day's work. The gardens glimmered in late afternoon light, dew from the morning mostly dried, revealing vibrant leaves and flowers that seemed to pause in appreciation of the slower rhythm. Here, learning continued, but in a reflective, considered pace, mirroring the town's own gradual wind-down. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, neighbours exchanged greetings with gentle smiles, commenting on the day's accomplishments or offering small tokens of goods. Children returned borrowed tools, fetched letters, or shared small stories from chores completed in nearby homes. The town's rhythm, though slower, remained communal. Movement was measured, interactions warm, and the shared sense of continuity apparent in every gesture. Even in this lull, Williamsburg remained alive, each person connected to the town's pulse. At the governor's palace, courtyards glimmered in the low sun, fountains sparkled, and staff adjusted furniture, polished silver, and ensured lanterns were ready for the evening. Guards paced their posts with calm vigilance, noting the slower flow of traffic and occasional visitors, yet remaining alert and attentive. The palace, like the town itself, balanced order, beauty, and rhythm, marking the passage of day with steady, dignified care. As late afternoon deepened into the golden light of early evening, Williamsburg's heartbeat was gentle but assured. The marketplace emptied, workshops slowed, and homes grew warmer and more intimate. Streets became quieter, punctuated by the soft sounds of children's laughter, distant carts, and the occasional song or conversation drifting from open windows. The town prepared itself to transition gracefully from day into night, balancing care, diligence, and community, each resident contributing in their own way to the enduring rhythm of Williamsburg. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with warm shades of amber, rose, and gold, Williamsburg shifted fully into evening. Shadows stretched long across the cobblestones, softening the town's textures and bathing the timbered walls of houses and shops in gentle, glowing light. Lanterns and candle flames flickered to life, casting small pools of warm radiance on doorways, windows, and streets. The once busy marketplace was now nearly empty, with only a few merchants tidying remaining goods and exchanging last words with lingering customers before closing their stalls. The rhythm of the town slowed, measured, deliberate, preparing for the final hours of the day. In homes, kitchens glowed warmly with the hearth's light. The aroma of roasted meats, simmering stews, and fresh bread drifted through rooms, mingling with herbs and the faint scent of wax from lit candles. Families gathered around tables for supper, children recounting the day's adventures and parents sharing reflections on work, chores, and neighborly interactions. Conversations were calm, punctuated by laughter or gentle guidance, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and connection. Servants moved quietly between rooms, replenishing water, adjusting firewood, and ensuring that each household ran smoothly during this quiet, reflective time. The blacksmith's forge, though largely at rest, still glowed faintly with residual heat. The master and apprentices tidied tools, cooled irons, and reflected on the day's work. sparks had long ceased to fly, but the rhythm of the forge lingered in memory. Each hammer strike, each careful shaping of metal, a testament to diligence, patience, and skill. The forge, like the town itself, now rested in gentle anticipation, aware that labor had been completed for the day, yet ready to awaken again with the coming light. The apothecary's shop too embraced the evening lull. Bottles were cleaned, jars refilled, and herbs carefully stored for the next day. The soft scent of chamomile, lavender, and rosemary lingered, calming the shop and providing a quiet sanctuary for those seeking remedies in the fading light. A mother might pause at the doorway to collect a minor herb for her child, or a passerby would consult softly about a lingering ache. The apothecary moved with measured care, aware that even in the quieter hours, knowledge and attention provided comfort and connection to the town's inhabitants. Children, released from daytime play and chores, now moved toward home. Footsteps echoed softly on cobblestones as they returned to families, carrying small tokens, messages, or simply the stories of the day. Laughter, though quieter, persisted in clusters around corners or courtyards, punctuating the otherwise calm streets with youthful energy. Some paused to admire lantern light reflecting in windows, or to observe the flickering shadows cast by tree branches on walls. Even in this softer tempo, children learned the rhythms of work, play, and community, absorbing the pulse of Williamsburg as the day gave way to evening. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, neighbors shared brief greetings, discussing the day's events or offering small tasks and favors to be completed before nightfall. The town's social rhythm, though gentler, continued to maintain its sense of connectedness. Stories, advice, and small gestures of care passed from household to household, weaving the fabric of communal life into the fading light. The streets, while quieter than at midday, remained alive with subtle motion and sound, a testament to the enduring energy of human interaction. In the college courtyards and gardens, students concluded observations, tidied their tools, and closed journals. Professors walked slowly among plants, offering final guidance and reflecting quietly on the day's lessons. The gardens shimmered in the soft evening light, dew forming on leaves as temperatures cooled. Knowledge, like craft and commerce, was a living part of the town, continuing its quiet rhythm even as daylight waned. The careful attention to detail, patience, and reflection mirrored the town's own transition into evening calm. At the governor's palace, lanterns were lit along walkways and in courtyards, fountains sparkling in the soft, fading light. Guards maintained posts with watchful calm, observing streets now nearly silent. Servants adjusted furnishings, polished silverware, and prepared rooms for the approaching night. The palace, though grand and formal, participated in Williamsburg's evening rhythm, its deliberate movements harmonizing with the town's quieter pulse. Authority, order, and beauty were present, but tempered with a reflective, calm grace. Music and conversation filled select homes and taverns, soft and gentle in tone. A lute strummed quietly in a parlor, a small chorus of voices singing a familiar melody, while neighbors shared quiet discussion over evening tea. Candlelight reflected in polished surfaces, casting flickering shadows that danced across walls and floors. These moments of calm reflection, gentle artistry, and shared companionship marked the town's evening, a quiet celebration of human connection and the day's accomplishments. As twilight deepened into night, Williamsburg prepared to rest. Lanterns and candlelight guided footsteps. Homes glowed warmly against darkened streets, and the town exhaled gently, transitioning from measured activity into the serenity of evening. The day, full of labor, learning, play, and care, now receded into memory, leaving only the soft pulse of the town's enduring rhythm. Williamsburg's heartbeat, steady and confident, was reflected in every home, workshop, and garden, a reminder of resilience, connection, and the timeless beauty of shared life. Night descended gently over Williamsburg, drawing a velvet curtain across the sky. Stars twinkled faintly in the deepening blue, and the moon cast a pale, silvery light on rooftops, cobblestones, and timbered walls. Lanterns glowed warmly in doorways and windows. Their flickering flames mirrored softly in polished surfaces, while the streets fell mostly silent, embracing the stillness that marked the town's final hours. The once bustling marketplace was empty, stalls closed, and the faint scent of hay, herbs, and evening fires drifted lazily through narrow alleys and open squares. Homes were quiet havens of warmth and rest. Families had gathered around fires or settled into bed, the flickering candlelight now a gentle glow accompanying whispered stories, prayers, or soft lullabies. Children's breathing was steady and calm, their earlier energy now dissolved into dreams. Parents reflected quietly on the day's labor and interactions, sharing whispered thoughts, gentle smiles, and soft reassurances with one another. The hearths, still crackling faintly, radiated warmth that mingled with the serenity of the night, filling rooms with comfort and a sense of continuity. The blacksmith's forge, long extinguished, lay dark and still. Tools were hung in careful order, the embers of the forge cooled to faint warmth, and the apprentices had departed, heads bowed slightly from fatigue, yet filled with the knowledge gained throughout the day. Even in darkness, the rhythm of craft lingered in memory. The deliberate strikes, the hiss of iron meeting water, the sparks dancing briefly before fading. The forge, a symbol of diligence and skill, now rested alongside the town, prepared to awaken again with the dawn. The apothecary's shop was similarly hushed. Shelves were orderly, bottles capped and labelled, and the quiet scent of herbs lingered in the air. Candles, carefully trimmed and placed in lanterns, cast gentle illumination, ensuring the shop was both secure and ready for early visitors the following day. A sense of calm and attentive care permeated the space, a reflection of the wisdom and patience that had guided every action throughout the day. Even in darkness, the apothecary's presence offered reassurance, a quiet anchor in the community's life. Children, nestled in beds or cradled in warmth, dreamt softly of the morning's games, the forge's sparks, and the gentle bustle of streets they had explored. Their laughter now transformed into murmurs of sleep, their small bodies relaxed, absorbing the comfort of home, family, and the continuity of town life. The town itself seemed to breathe softly, its pulse slow and steady, each household, workshop, and courtyard contributing to a shared serenity. Along Duke of Gloucester Street, watchmen patrolled at measured intervals, their footsteps quiet yet purposeful. Lanterns swayed lightly in the evening breeze, casting elongated shadows across cobblestones. They observed the sleeping town with care, their presence a silent assurance that even in darkness, Williamsburg remained safe, its rhythm preserved, its heartbeat steady. Occasionally, the distant hoot of an owl or the soft rustle of leaves accompanied the patrol, gentle notes in the nocturnal symphony of the town. The governor's palace glowed faintly under the moonlight, gardens reflecting silver beams, and fountains murmuring softly. Guards maintained watch, and servants rested in anticipation of morning duties. Even in the grandeur of the palace, the quiet of night harmonized with the softer pulse of the town below. Authority, order, and elegance coexisted with calm, patient stillness, reinforcing Williamsburg's balance between structure and domestic life. In the streets and courtyards, the gentle aroma of evening fires mingled with the faint scent of herbs, flowers, and wood smoke. Every home, workshop, and garden seemed to exhale, releasing the energy of a day filled with labor, learning, and connection. The town's heartbeat, though slowed, persisted in the form of soft night sounds, the whisper of wind through trees, the faint call of animals, and the occasional echo of a late traveler's steps. These were the quiet notes of a community at rest, a town in harmony with itself and the rhythms of life. By the deepening hours of night, Williamsburg was wrapped in stillness, each resident embraced by warmth, comfort, and quiet reflection. Dreams carried the echoes of the day, the forge's sparks, the marketplace's laughter, the lessons learned, and the shared experiences of a community bound together by diligence, care, and continuity. Even as the town slept, its heartbeat was steady, enduring, and alive, a promise that tomorrow would bring another day, another rhythm, and another chapter in the living story of Williamsburg. As the first pale light of dawn brushed the rooftops of Williamsburg, the town stirred gently, still wrapped in the hush of early morning. Mist hovered above the fields, curling through cobblestone streets and around timbered homes, softening edges and lending a quiet, ethereal glow to familiar structures. Birds began their morning songs, tentative and delicate at first, then gradually swelling into a chorus that echoed through streets, gardens, and courtyards. The day was ready to begin anew, and Williamsburg, though at rest only hours before, awaited its rhythm with calm anticipation. Families slowly rose, opening shutters to the soft light, stretching limbs, and inhaling the crisp morning air. Hearths were rekindled, fires coaxed to life, and the aroma of fresh bread, herbs, and coffee mingled with the dewy air. Children rubbed sleepy eyes, listened to the gentle murmur of parents preparing breakfast, and felt the reassuring continuity of life's routines. Each home breathed with calm energy, the quiet intimacy of domestic care marking the start of another day in Williamsburg. In workshops, artisans began to stir. The blacksmith reignited the forge, coals glowing steadily as apprentices prepared tools and materials. Hammers would soon rise and fall again, but for now, there was a pause. A moment to reflect on the previous day's labor and the lessons embedded in every strike, every fold, and every spark of molten iron. Similarly, the apothecary opened jars, inhaled the familiar fragrance of dried herbs, and arranged ingredients with deliberate care, each action a quiet affirmation of knowledge, skill, and service to the town. Streets filled gradually with the rhythm of life. Farmers returned from early chores, carts rattling gently over cobblestones, while merchants readied stalls, arranging fresh vegetables, fruits, and goods for the day ahead. Students walked courtyards and gardens, pens and journals in hand, sketching, measuring, observing, and preparing to absorb the lessons the town offered. Every action, from the smallest household task to the measured hammer strike in a workshop, contributed to the enduring pulse of Williamsburg. As the town awakened fully, one could observe the subtle balance of history and humanity woven into each day. Williamsburg was more than streets and buildings. It was community, labor, learning, artistry, and care, all interlaced into the daily rhythm of human life. The patterns of yesterday informed the present, and the rituals of daily work and reflection promised continuity for tomorrow. Every family, child, artisan, and resident played a part in the living story of the town, a story that unfolded slowly, deliberately, and beautifully with each passing hour. Even as the day began anew, the memory of the previous day lingered, a soft echo in hearts and minds. Children remembered games and lessons. Artisans recalled the precise shaping of iron. Apothecaries reflected on remedies prepared, and neighbors cherished shared moments of conversation and kindness. Williamsburg's life was a tapestry of small, interconnected moments, each thread contributing to the richness and resilience of the community. For those who walk its streets today, the echoes of these rhythms remain. Cobblestones, gardens, and timbered homes carry whispers of daily life. The laughter of children, the measured strike of hammers, the scent of fresh bread and herbs, the flicker of candlelight, and the gentle guidance of teachers and elders. Williamsburg's legacy is not solely in its architecture or preserved streets, but in the enduring story of human diligence, connection, and care, the subtle yet profound beauty of everyday life. As the sun rose higher, illuminating rooftops, streets, and gardens, Williamsburg prepared to embrace another day, much like countless days before. And while time moves forward relentlessly, the lessons of these streets, these homes, and these hearts remain. That a life of purpose, skill, care, and community leaves an imprint far beyond the passing hours, shaping both history and memory. Williamsburg was alive then, and it continues to live today in the stories, echoes, and quiet rhythms that endure. And so, dear listener, as your eyes grow heavy and your body relaxes, imagine the soft clatter of cobblestones, the gentle warmth of hearths, the whisper of leaves, and the steady heartbeat of a town alive with care, skill, and human connection. Let Williamsburg's rhythm carry you gently into sleep. And remember that every small action, every shared smile, and every quiet moment is part of a living story, as enduring and beautiful as the town itself.